Coming up this week on the Markcast. Well, in the words of the infamous Mike D, MCA, and Adrock, sometimes you gotta fight for your rights.
You gotta fight for your right.
We are taking inspiration from the Beastie Boys, and we are drafting the Alt Football Fans Bill of Rights today. What does that mean? Stick around, you'll find out. Plus, tons of real football content this week. Chris Jones, head coach and GM of the Edmonton Elks of the CFL, stopping by the show. This one has been long promised. You guys will not want to miss it.
It is challenging, because first of all, every player here at this game, they've grown up just like kids up in Canada. They've grown up wanting to play in the NFL versus the CFL, So when you talk to these 20, 21, 22-year-olds, that's not even really in 99% of them's thought process.
And then Coach Sharper for the XFL DC Defender stops by. We're living in the Texas ice storm right now, making the best of our time, getting some of these awesome interviews for you guys.
When you're talking about the level of coaching years on these staffs, it's unbelievable. I mean, every coaching staff has at least 30 years of NFL coaching experience, and then you have guys sprinkled in there with the college experience. So it's a good mixing pot of college and NFL knowledge. So I'm just enjoying the fact that I'm going to be able to compete against those coaches and compete against those players, so it's going to be a good thing.
Then Pat Rifino stops by. Pat is talking the XFL Battlehawks, fresh off Coach Beck's press conference. We are talking the XFL quarterback controversy carousel right now. Plus, what is the USFL doing? Off-season signings for some of your favorite USFL teams.
Don't forget Mr. Luis Perez, Mr. Alt Football himself. So, there's a little bit, that room gets a little bit stuffy, and Brett Hundley has played in NFL games before, so that might not be the best situation for him. So I'd like to see Brian come back to the Stars.
Then Christian McFarland of your 2022 USFL Season 1 champion stops by the show, catching up with us before his return for Season 2.
Some guys that are in the same situation as me where they sign back, and other guys where, they're trying to figure out if they're going to come back or not. It was tough for some people just because, XFL's new and, that kind of thing. But for the most part, we've gotten the majority of our players back.
And then the Professor Andrew Murray, long form discussion here, almost an hour. What do we as all football fans, what do we want? What do we deserve from the USFL, from the XFL? We are drafting the Alt Football Fans Bill of Rights. You will not want to miss it. Hey guys, welcome to the Markcast. Reed here. Most of the XFL training camp might be shut down this week due to inclement weather in Texas, but that does not stop your boy Reed scheduling, doing interviews, even have interview schedule already recorded for next week. You'll be excited to hear about that here. We are 2 weeks away, XFL kickoff, I think 2 weeks away, February 2nd as I record this, February 3rd as you listen to this. Lots of great content coming up. Hope you enjoy. On the show today, a little existential, we kind of live, we live in the football world, and then we kind of live a little bit more. Let's have long-form, deep-dive discussions about, what do we want as fans, right? Because that's what everyone's looking for. But I think it's good. We needed the theme this week. I didn't know if, quarterback signings in the XFL, is that enough to carry the show? So we're bringing in the Professor Andrew Murray to do all that. Like and subscribe if you enjoy any of this content. Like I said, balance between real football talk today and then some other shenanigans. But I think we had a good mix. Chris Jones, going to lead with that interview today. You will not want to miss that. Even if I've said the last couple weeks on here, even if you're not the biggest CFL, whatever, Chris Jones, is coach in America, coach in the CFL. We're talking a lot about Chris is having to come down now, do extra scouting. He was at the Collegiate Bowl, I think, if I remember. It was a couple weeks ago when we recorded the interview. Scouting these players, wanting to get a hold of them before the XFL does, before the USFL does. I talked, Taylor Cornelius, one of the quarterbacks for the Edmonton Elks, was in talks with the XFL to return. That's why they signed him to the contract when they did here last season. lots of insights from Chris Jones. Even if you're not the biggest CFL guy, what are the league, GMs, coaches, leadership up there in the CFL? What are they doing to combat now the USFL and the XFL? Really interesting discussion with Chris Jones. Really appreciate that. And then Coach Jamie Sharper coming on, that played for the Seahawks, won the Super Bowl with the Ravens. Really appreciate that. The team over with the XFL Defenders setting that up this week. I think, the XFL had a lot of plans this week. We were going to do ESPN testing and, co-practices and broadcast tests, all this kind of stuff. And then, Texas ice storm. I see today it was still icy there. I saw Battlehawks players jumping into swimming pools that were surrounded by ice. Seems like they're having a fun time. Feels a little summer campy right now. I'm there for it. Seems like a lot of fun. But Coach Sharper stops by. I really appreciate that from the Defenders. I think that is a good interview. Talking just kind of, it's, the all-star brigade right now between coaches and players. And what does he think? Seeing, he's got Reggie Barlow there, whatever. All these familiar faces here from the past, all converging in Texas. We had the big rah-rah DJ and Danny and Jerry Cardinal, town hall this week with the players. So that was exciting. And then Pat Rifino, XFL News Hub, coming back on the show. We were originally just going to talk USFL offseason signings. Pat wanted to make sure we spotlighted some of the team rebuildings. And then obviously we had everything this week with the the quarterback changes, the Brian Scott in Vegas and Brett Huntley being signed and Paxton Lynch. So we're getting all Pat's insights with that, plus Coach Beck's press conference that Pat was at, and then also the USFL signing. So Pat is hitting triple today, 3 at bats, for Pat, covering all of that. Christian McFarland coming on from your USFL Season 1 Birmingham Stallion champions. Really appreciate catching up with Christian. And it sounds like Christian's going to hook us up with some more of it, his compadres down there in the Birmingham hub, at least, here moving forward into USFL Season 2. So that will be exciting. And then, like I said, long-form discussion, kind of a pseudo co-host at this point. Andy Murray, the professor, coming back on. We got inspired this week. The Jacksonville Sharks in the NAL, the National Arena League, and now in the AFL is returning here, the Arena Football League. But one of the teams there, they have kind of a fan bill of rights of like, what do we want to work towards with our fans? What kind of product do we want to do? What do we want the fans to be entitled to? What is our mission statement? That sort of thing. Got inspired. Does the XFL, does the USFL, do they need mission statements? I think the USFL and the XFL fit a little bit more into that. Arena, CFL, hey, let's have a dialogue with our fans versus like the NFL of this is what we're broadcasting and you're going to watch it or not. So I think it's interesting, kind of philosophical, a little bit in the weeds there, but really appreciate that. I think you guys will enjoy a fruitful conversation there. Like I said at the top, like and subscribe. Lots more content coming up. We are barreling away here to the XFL kickoff February 18th. We will be in Arlington, still sorting out accommodations there. Tremendously tricky here, the city of Arlington, and trying to get all of that figured out. But we have plans and we have backup plans. We will be live, Saturday down there in Arlington, but still figuring out the logistics of that. Like I said, like and subscribe. Thanks so much. I'll check back in at the end of the show. I'm walking off to go film a wedding now, so hopefully there's no crazy breaking news today. We'll see you guys soon. Well, our listeners, I know, are thrilled for this. It's bright and early. Shoot this energy into my veins here. We have Chris Jones, head coach of the Edmonton Elks. How are you doing, sir?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Just about to finish my workout.
Yeah. Well, what is a Chris Jones workout? It's 7 a.m. Pacific here. What does a Chris Jones workout look like?
Well, it's not overly strenuous. I'm getting a little too old for that. All I do is walk about an hour every day.
That's good. And where are you at right now?
I'm down in California at the NFL PA game. Perfect. We've got a couple. I think we've got 3 or 4 guys, maybe 5 guys on our negotiation list on these teams down here competing, and so it's a good opportunity for you to come in and you can see them play and decide whether to leave them on your negotiation list or take them off.
What CFL offseason here doesn't exist, right?
No, not for us. I mean, we got work to do, and I love being hands on with it. And that's the thing. I love being in a position to where we can go see these guys compete in actual football drill. So
we were going to get you on the media day, busy day. I think you had lots of calls. Why do you think you were so popular, and what was media day and off season and everything like for you?
Well, I mean, it was a busy time. There's no doubt. I mean, and I was joking, and the CFL got mad at me for joking with them about it being not necessarily my favorite day, but it's just it's a busy time. Beautiful place to have the meeting, by the way. We were up in Kananaskis. I mean, it was cold, but boy, it was pretty. And and it's an opportunity to get out, talk ball, and got to see some of the guys in the league that that you resonate with. And so it was a really good time. And like I say, this is an integral year for the CFL. We've got 2 other leagues that we're competing with down here for players. And, it's a busy, busy time.
Well, and that was going to be one of my questions. I mean, we can certainly start there. We host XFL. We'll be at the kickoff. I was at Grey Cup. We cover all this stuff. But what are your thoughts here? XFL kicks off in a month. USFL here afterward. I know that you were on with Morley Scott talking about it. He's a friend of the show as well. What do you make of these leagues starting up?
Well, I mean, they've been trying for years. And I think the thing that we've got to realize, there's a lot of money behind both of them. And, and there's a lot of players. So even if they do, stay in place, I mean, there's a lot of good players down here. You just have to work and dig just a little harder.
Do you view now, USFL entering year 2, they pass union and they have their CBA. I mean, they increase wages year over year. Is that stuff that you pay attention to? Like, okay, we did get through a season now. We are trying to get into season 2 and makes it feel a little bit more of a threat.
Well, I mean, you've got, Jim Pop's the guy running the show down there, and he knows our league very well. And, the sustainability of our league has been, the fact that they've had, good people in place and good people that go find players and people that know how to be physically responsible with those players. I mean, so, know that you can't pay everybody, and so that's kind of what's given our league, I think, the foothold to be around as long as we have. And quite frankly, I think that that's probably one of our biggest arguments right now, is the fact that our league's been around for so long. I mean, it's got sustainability. The fans in Canada love our league. It's an outstanding league and very well respected. That's the thing. I mean, you've got kind of your naysayers and your people that know, and there's a lot of people in the NFL that know how good a game that we've got.
In terms of this, obviously you can pitch the sustainability. Besides that, like, what do you, obviously, like you said, you're down here scouting guys, figuring out the negotiations list. Like, how do you incentivize? Because, if entry level pay is the same, I might go play in Birmingham or Memphis versus, no offense to, beautiful Edmonton, but it just might be easier for my, family and financial situation.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, I think that, the thing I think we offer these players, and it's a little bit easier once they've gone through the NFL process and they see that, hey, I'm on the outside looking in, is you can come and earn a living here in this league, So it's a league where you can come, you can make a name for yourself, you can become, I won't say a name because they'll probably find me for saying somebody's name, but one of these big time players, a Taylor Cornelius or Ricky Ray, or, what I mean? Once you become that type of guy, you can make a real living in our league. And I think the thing that our window, I think that's what we have to get out to the masses, is the fact that you come and you play, you're earning your stripes on our side of the border. And then if you come and you play well, you still have that opportunity to go back down south to go to the NFL if you want to, So there's nothing that locks you in like it did, say, 50 years ago with the contracts.
We've had, Naylor, obviously, and everyone on in the past talking about, the ramp up to try to get, especially like quarterbacks, into the CFL. It's like a 3-year process, and we've seen Cornelius here grow, and I want to talk about him as well. Is that too hard? Is the CFL we're trying to incentivize guys up there, and I know the pride of the CFL is, our game is the best, and it's challenging, and we have the waggle, we have all these different things. But is that, when you're trying to get these new guys up, is it almost too challenging?
Well, no, I mean it is challenging, because first of all, every player here at this game, they've grown up just like kids up in Canada. They've grown up wanting to play in the NFL versus the CFL. So when you talk to these 20, 21, 22-year-olds, that's not even really in 99% of them's thought process. Whereas if once they go through and they figure out next year at this time, they're a little bit, they're on the flip side of the coin. They're a lot more open to go, you know what, I better go get some film, because let's face it, of these kids that are here at this game, you probably have, 100 kids, right? So 50 on each side. If there's 100 kids here, there's probably a handful that are going to play in the NFL. And then there's a handful that are going to play in the other leagues. The rest of them are going to be, using their degree or back at school trying to finish their degree. So, I mean, and that's the reality of pro football.
What did you make of the other comments I had? I wanted to get your thoughts about, and we talked with Coach Dinwiddie during the the media day stuff, and coaching, salary caps, all of that, being able to not only get the best players in the league, but obviously getting the best staff. Thoughts on that? Trying to increase and build on that.
Which salary cap? The player salary cap?
Well, we can go both. First off, coaching staff. The coaching staff and the money going there.
Yeah. Unfortunately, our staff, we're working off about $500,000 less than the other teams. We're it's a struggle. And I'm fortunate that I've got such a good, loyal group of guys that kind of travel together when we go and we try to rebuild these teams. And they travel together. I mean, we've been the big majority of these guys been together for a long time. And I told them, I said, once we get the monies back into our budget from all the other staffs that have come and gone, we're still paying a whole bunch of coaches. And that's hard when essentially you have an organization that's on its knees and you're trying to get it back up off of its knees, and you're working with less money to keep people, in place. And, to get quality folks, you have to pay them, and or eventually you'll lose them.
Would you like to see that be increased for you guys across the league, have more options, team by team?
Yeah, I mean, certainly. I mean, and I know people say, oh, all you care about is your money, and that's about as far from the case as can be. But it's tough to walk in when you know how hard your guys are working, and your guys are working off of about a third of what, or 2/3 of what other people are working off of. So, I mean, I think the more money that you can put towards something, that you can put towards a staff, the better staff that you can get. I mean, we've lost a lot of really good quality coaches, over the last, 5 or 6 years, with Scott Milanovich and Mark Trestman, and I mean, you can keep going. The Marcus Brady's. I mean, all those people have left the CFL, and so the more money that we have to make that work and to get our staffs, I think the better quality guys we can keep.
Yeah, we have Jamie Elizondo as well here, taking one of the OCs here in the XFL coming up here in just a few months or weeks.
Right.
In terms of quarterbacks, attracting quarterbacks, being able to pay them separately. That was something that Coach Dinwiddie talked about on our show, got a lot of traction. If we could have almost like a separate salary cap or percentage that wouldn't count against the full pie. What do you make of that?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, it's something to certainly, if you had a larger amount of money to go down south, because there again, you think about these NIL deals that these kids are getting. Like these NIL deals they're getting, they're making $100,000. Just about every kid out at University of, Alabama or Tennessee, all these big schools, they're making $100,000 before they leave school. And so, 70,000 Canadian plus a little bit of housing, is less money than what they made in college. So when you talk to the quarterback, who certainly is going to be making more than 100,000, like I don't know, the kid from Tennessee, from California, the quarterback, I think he got another million, I mean, so how are you ever going to get a guy like that? If he's not going to play in the NFL, how are you going to get that guy to make that cross the border unless you have a larger amount of number of money to get that kid, so, and the key is to have good quarterbacks, good defensive linemen, good, not just have a guy, but to have good quality players. And I have to agree with Ryan. If you had a larger amount of money, then you could go down and try to get a guy like that. Because, what people don't realize too is when that kid's a college quarterback, he's the marquee guy in XYZ city. He's got a car to drive. He can play free golf. He's got a job. As soon as he gets done, talking on the radio when he goes back, if he's not in the NFL, he can talk on the radio for X number of dollars. Like, there's so many opportunities for these guys, but they still want to play ball. So if you had a chunk of money or a larger amount of money to be able to, certainly I think it would help us recruit them.
Obviously, and we'll talk a couple. Actually, I'll let you go here soon. I appreciate your time. Is seeing someone like Nathan Rourke here, who I followed the Elks. I got my hat on. I followed the Lions. Have him say, the CFL was an unforeseen detour. I think he said, and always dreamed of playing in the NFL. Like, how do you react to that? How do you compete with that here with someone that set the world on fire last year?
Yeah, well, he's such a good player. He is. Halfway through the year, looking at his stats, because when you think about, I've coached against Ricky Ray, I've coached against Dave Dickinson, I've coached against Anthony Calvillo, I've coached against some of the best to ever play this game, and that kid could compete at every level. He was tough like Mike Riley. Ball was out like Anthony Calvillo. He had touch on the ball. Like, he was such a dynamic young player. And I'm sure, most kids up in Canada, they don't even know that football exists till about, age 9. And then they fall in love with football. They're hockey, and that's just kind of the reality. And in the States, it's more football, but both sides of the border, football's a great game. We have to be physically responsible. I know that there's probably somebody out there, got a frown on talking about, because we've talked about paying everybody, and they're like, where's the money come from? And they're exactly correct. We've got to do the things necessary to continue to grow the game and push the game and try to make those, dollars off the field in order to be able to sustain the league and to pay, better players. So there's got to be work done on both sides of it.
How did you view Taylor Cornelius's growth here this year? I know he got signed up, and he was with the XFL before, and tracking him coming up there. And like I said,
I found out that I was correct. That the XFL was already in talks very deep with his representation. Had we not gone ahead and headed that off and tried to, and the good thing is we saved some money in order to, at the end of the year, be able to sign either NFL guys dropping out or, guys that played well for us to try to keep them in our uniform. And I know for sure, straight from the horse's mouth, that there was people in the XFL that were talking to these people. And so I think Taylor, certainly he wasn't perfect. But you look at Mike Riley. You figure he was a backup at BC for like 3 years. Then he came to Edmonton and he didn't win. And finally, his 5th year, he ended up, winning, big with us that first year. And then he won the Grey Cup the next year. So it takes some time to develop. You look at Anthony Calvillo, he was down south and he was, I think, Hamilton. Then he bounced over to and finally found his foothold in Montreal. So it takes a while for these quarterbacks, but then when they figure it out, then they take off and they become themselves. There's been others, if you look around our league now, that it's taken a while for them to develop. And, there's not very many, Ricky Rays or Rourke's that just come up and just first year they light it up, so. But anyway, I like the development and the direction that Taylor's going, and not just Taylor. I think our entire quarterback room, Kyle Oxley got worked out. He worked out for somebody the other day, and Trey Ford worked out for somebody the other day. So, we've got some guys that I feel like are talented. It's just a matter of them growing.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, you said people are calling him. When I post in groups and people go, "Well, what does this XFL crap have to do with?" It's like it's all connected, and especially now if these leagues can compete for a little bit, like you said, yeah, we'll see. I mean, time will tell. But I got a question: Trey Ford's growth, and then I'll get one more. I'll let you go. I promise you. Obviously got hurt, came in, and obviously big story as well, Canadian, kind of all that. What did you make of Trey and how he did, and what do you hope to see from him here moving forward?
Well, I mean, he's got a skill set. I went to that Buffalo workout and I saw him run 4.41 with a 40-inch vertical, and he brought it almost 11 feet. I mean, so that's a unique athlete, because when I travel the country and I do these workouts and I'm trying out DBs and wide receivers and running backs from all over the country, those are numbers that can compete anywhere, Miami, Dallas, anywhere. And so LA. So, he's a unique athlete, and he's got arm talent. He can make most all the throws. Now it's a matter of him getting the understanding of exactly where to go with the ball. And then if not, find your check down. And if your check down's covered, then move around and don't get hit. I mean, that's kind of, what we've got to, learn. And that way we keep ourselves healthy. And, but I think he's got a tremendously bright future. And I mean, as a quarterback, not a position change guy. He's got a future as a quarterback.
Great. Looking forward here, grade 2022 Elks. And then what are we looking for in the performance for 2023 here? Obviously still trying to after this airs, we'll have Victor on. I had a nice chat with Victor Cui as well. So we're talking kind of promoting all that, but grade Elks this year. And then what are we looking forward to next year?
Well, I mean, you don't even have it. It can go without even being said for a grade. I mean, it's only been, I've been in the league 20 something years, and it's only been a couple of years where you don't have a winning season, so not having a winning season, you don't even have to grade that. That's graded by itself. You can see it. But as far as what we're doing moving forward, I mean, our expectations are to win the Grey Cup. And that's always been anything less than that's a disappointment. And nobody, expects more out of ourselves than us.
Well, Chris, I really appreciate it here. This was people looking forward to this. I really appreciate you taking the time, and we got kind of a tour of LA in the background as well. So this was fun. Yeah, really appreciate it.
I'm in this park. It's a real beautiful park. I'm staying next door in a hotel here, and I'm just finishing my walk. And there's a public golf course here. I mean, it's a real beautiful place, but it's cold. You see, I got my little Canadian suit I got up in, I can't even remember where I got it, up there, Calgary, and it's cold out here today.
Well, Coach Jones, I really appreciate it. I hope we get you back on. Excited for the Elks this year, and people, you get a lot of heat. So I hope the team performs, and I hope you get them up to snuff. But you do. You're kind of a lightning rod. Have you noticed that?
You know what? I don't worry about that. Everybody has their own opinion, and like I say, I mean, I love the league, and I work as hard as anybody in the league, and I know I can get up in the morning and be proud of what we do.
Awesome. All right, Chris Jones, thank you so much again. We'll talk soon.
All right, man. Thank you for having me on.
Well, as a Seattle native here, it's good to see this familiar face from a blast from the past year. We have Coach Sharper on the show. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. I'm here in Arlington, Texas. Everybody from the XFL's down here, and we're trying to get things together as this weather cooperates. I think yesterday we had a little meeting with the ESPN and some of the higher ups. We were able to see all the other teams and coaches at Dallas Live there, and we were able to reunite with a couple guys from the NFL, a couple guys from college and what have you. So it was a good little event yesterday they had. So it was good.
Yeah, I saw The Rock doing. The Rock is the only man that can wear a cardigan just as a T-shirt. I did see him out there doing. What was that like? And I have more questions here with people from the past, but what was it like getting everybody together, seeing that? Obviously, we had Jerry Cardinal here and Danny and The Rock and everybody else. What was that like?
It was good. I mean, I know a lot of the head coaches, that played NFL, and they talked about how they were getting their staffs together and how they were going to do practice, but you haven't seen anybody for about 2 or 3 months or so. I've seen some of our head coaches like Barlow doing media, but as all the staff really haven't seen each other or know what's going on. We had an in-house scrimmage / practice against the Orlando team. So I was able to see T-Buck and some coaches, but to be in one spot and see all the head coaches and all the players, including some players that I coached in college, it was good to reunite and see those guys again and hope they were doing well.
It is. It's like summer camp, right? I mean, you get everybody here. It's literally blasts from walks of your past and everybody's past. I just have to imagine. And on the player side, seeing all you guys and, you're interacting and just knowing all the level of coaching staff that's there, it has to be incredible for everybody.
Oh, man, it's tremendous. When you're talking about the level of coaching years on these staffs, it's unbelievable. I mean, every coaching staff has at least 30 years of NFL coaching experience. And then you have guys sprinkled in there with the college experience. So it's a good mixing pot of college and NFL knowledge. So I'm just enjoying the fact that I'm going to be able to compete against those coaches and compete against those players, so it's going to be a good thing.
You were in the NFL for a long time, obviously, Super Bowl champion here. What are your thoughts on the hub setup and everything they have for you guys with all the facilities?
I think it's a good thing. When we talk about the hub and how they are setting it up, they want to make things as easy as possible for the actual players and coaches to be able to get practice done, get meetings done. And they think the most fair part of that is to be a place like Texas and Dallas area where they spend a lot of money on high school football down here. So every facility has an indoor, every facility has turf. You have the workout facility. So this was a place where they could get 8 teams and share different stadiums that were comparable to each other. And I think if I was in DC right now, we'd be spending big time money on facilities. If we were in Seattle, you'd be spending big time money traveling to get to those facilities. But in Texas, the highway system's so good, and the fact that they have so many great high school stadiums and facilities here, it allows everybody to start off on an equal foot. And then the thing of the possibility of us going in the actual real thing of playing in the cities, playing in DC, playing in Seattle, I think that brings the fan base full circle where they can actually see their team play in the home city.
Curious your thoughts on the travel. Obviously, you played in Seattle, and we, have a tricky schedule up here in the Northwest. And what are your thoughts of, even obviously, going to DC, and we were at Audi Field, back for the kickoff in 2020. Thoughts on just the travel and how that's going to go with the players?
I think I don't know for sure how they're going to travel. I was hearing some things about maybe the teams traveling together, but I'm not sure if that's going to be the case. But it's going to be just like NFL. Get there a day before the game, be in a hotel, be able to play the game the next day, and then get back out of town, back home to Texas. So we'll be in Texas for practice and what have you, but we'll just be there in the city for that day and then that night of the game. So we've had some coaches fly back to DC for interviews and some good PR things. So I'm sure they'll keep doing that throughout the season as well.
Biggest challenge for you here, obviously spring football always has a shortened time frame, getting everyone training camp, and especially now you as a pro, pro coach as well. Challenges getting everybody up to snuff here ahead of the season.
Yeah, it's definitely a big challenge. You're talking about camp starting in January, only having like 4 or 5 weeks to get everybody ready. That's one thing that when we did our scouting process, and they included all the coaches in the scouting process and looked at guys' film, you were able to pick and kind of decide on what guys you wanted. And for me as a special teams coordinator here and a linebacker coach, I wanted players that have either stepped foot on the NFL field or were actual rookie camp invites on the NFL field. So they know certain schemes, certain things we're trying to get done in a Greg Williams defense. So the learning curve is not as great. Then you're talking about players that have already been scouted by the NFL. And the NFL thinks they're on a certain level. We don't have to reinvent the wheel as a scout / coach. We can sit there and say, all right, these guys were good enough to get an invite to an NFL camp. So they're on a different level. Let's go ahead and look at these guys harder, see if they can actually fit the mold, what we need. So that's how I started with my get process of my linebackers, and then looking at specialists that I have or guys that were kicked in camps of NFL and what have you. I have, I think 1 or 2 linebackers, only one linebacker that did not play some type of NFL ball. So that's kind of how I did my thing.
Thoughts on Coach Williams and just how everything's been going on the defensive side? I know he's, was an exciting name to be involved there in DC.
Oh, definitely. You're talking about Coach Williams. He's won a Super Bowl. I mean, he did it in New Orleans. He talks about when he was in Tennessee, how he compared with my Baltimore Ravens and how they actually had the best defense and what have you. But he's a great coach and he's a great motivator. He does some things that are different, but the thing is he gets guys motivated, ready to go. And then his defense, is going to definitely be top notch and bring pressure and be sound. And that's what I love to learn from a defensive coordinator who's been in it for so long. And he still has that fire. I think he has a better memory than I do because he's always talking about different stories from past players, and some of his favorite players I've ever coached, Sean Taylor, and those guys. So he always talks about, his safeties definitely play a big part of his defense. But his defense as a whole is definitely fun to play in as a player and as a coach.
In terms of you getting, here an opportunity for professional coaching, have you talked with any of the other, players that maybe you knew in the past or would like to transition into, coaching and maybe using the XFL as a springboard?
Yes, I've talked to plenty of players who probably coaching in college, coaching in CFL, and the window of that USFL, XFL window is something different where you have the fall where you can actually be with your family, the fall where you can maybe see NFL games, be around that. But then when your season starts in January, you have those 4 months where you got to get ready and get going. So it gives you some chance to be around your family early on in the fall, maybe kids going to school. Then you can go actually do some coaching for those 4 or 5 months, get things done. It's not where you're in college. When I came from college at Georgetown, it was a 10, 11 month of whirlwind from scouting to recruiting to coaching, what have you. So it's always something that you have to do. With the NFL and with XFL and professional football, you do have certain windows where you're doing a lot of work, but you do have a window where you can spend some time with your family. And I think that's a big thing with former players who've given their careers or given their 10 years of their life to NFL football, and then they've played all their high school and college. To actually have time to give something back to your family is something they kind of balance and kind of try to figure out. But the ability to be able to do that in the spring and have that fall with your family is big.
Well, because it goes both ways. I mean, we and a lot of fans, and obviously you're looking at for the players, and they're getting a second shot or a first shot, or depending on what happened. Coaching in the same way. And do you think that's a pathway that if you did want to get back to the NFL as a coach, I know you're saying you can balance schedules and do it, but if you wanted to get back into that life here, you could get a first shot in the XFL or the USFL and kind of work from there.
Yeah, when a lot of players, after they're done playing, they spend so much time crafting their sport and their bodies and what have you, so much time spent to be on that elite level. You can't imagine being a coach because, it's the same amount of time, even more, because your coaches are in the building longer than you. So some guys just can't fathom that starting off. But a transition of where you can actually get into coaching and see how that camaraderie you have with other coaches and the actual locker room, it kind of will bring a lot of guys back to coaching. I think that's the biggest thing. They're scared of the fact that the time it takes. How much time it took for you as a player. Coaches spend way more time in the actual building. So that kind of scares some guys off when you try it. But all the guys that I know who've tried coaching in high school and what have you all love it. And they will definitely love any type of entry point to professional football on that coaching realm.
How did you get to be with the Defenders specifically?
Well, I've known Coach Barlow for a long time. When I was coaching in Georgetown and I coached down in high school in Louisiana, I would see him on the coaching circuits and also at the conference, coaching American Football Coaches Association. And then when he took over at Virginia State, which is in Virginia, Petersburg, Virginia. I'm from Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. And my father is a Black College All-American out of Virginia State. So when he took over Virginia State as the head coach, I definitely followed him closer and talked to him more, talked about different players coming out of Virginia State that were possibly NFL guys. And so I was just in communication with him a lot more. And then when it came up to where he was actually going to take over the job, I talked to him about it, and he said that we could have a possibility of getting you on to this level. And I looked at XFL, and I looked at USFL, I looked at AAF, and I was warning about, the staying power, So that was a big thing. And I think when I started talking to some of my friends who know about the ownership, they gave me assurances that things were going to go the right way. So that's why I went ahead and left the job at Georgetown to come work with Coach Barlow.
I understandable hesitations there. I mean, what did friends, family, everybody say? Like, hey, I'm joining, this spring football thing. It's not for everyone on either side of the field.
Yeah, the biggest thing is there's been so many different leagues, and this is the third XFL. So they've heard about the spring leagues, and then they've seen them come and go. So the staying power is what I'm looking forward to. That's why I'm working my butt off to put a good product on the field so that we can get to not just win this season, but win in seasons to come. So that's always a big thing when you talk about trying to have that good product on the field where people will watch and they respect what's going on the football field.
Yeah, you'll see my wonderful sign here. One of our Canadian affiliates, the Twice Failed League, gave me back when it's we have to be aware of the history if we want to move into that. A couple more, I promise I'll let you go here. In terms of doing the linebacker coach and then also special teams, what led you to kind of have that dual role?
Well, I've always been a special teams player when I was playing, and I helped out on special teams at Georgetown. And this is a unique league when they talk about the kickoff return, and I have understanding about punt return. So it kind of just fell into where I felt that I could help out and do special teams also. So it's more planning, it's more organizational stuff. We talking about guys that are hurt one day, healthy the next, make sure they're all lined up, working on a scout team, what have you. So my installs, every day on our units, I'm in front of the whole team, making sure they understand it, and then being able to go on the field and get his stuff done is definitely a different level of preparation, but it's something that I enjoy, and I'm glad I'm doing it.
Thoughts specifically on the XFL? Obviously they have the unique kickoff and punting rules. Is there any differences that you've had to adapt to, or what are your thoughts on the league's rules?
The league's rules, they have a couple of different rules I'm very intrigued about. The cutting rule, it goes from sideline to sideline, 10 yards. So when I came to the NFL, you could cut like that, outside running plays and what have you. So that's something that I could prepare my players for, that one, to make sure that they stay healthy. And then I think going for the 1, 2 or 3 points, that'll be interesting. I want to see which teams will just go ahead and go for the max amount of points after they score a touchdown and see what kind of plays they run. But those are probably the two main things. I mean, the kicking part with the kickoff and kickoff return, it's pretty much status quo. Guys got to get off a block, and then you really can't kick it out of bounds or through the end zone. So you got to try to get them to have the ability to return the ball. So the penalties for kicking out of the end zone or kicking out of bounds are severe, where it goes to the 35-yard line or even the 45-yard line in some instances. So that's something where our kickers are going to have to kind of learn how to manipulate with their leg. And then our gunners and then also our outside perimeter guys will have to make sure that they get down the field and keep the ball in bounds as much as possible.
You won a Super Bowl with Rod Woodson, Coach Woodson here back with the Ravens. Excited to face him. I think it's week 2 you guys are set to face, or anyone else you're kind of looking forward to seeing across the field. I know you have friends on the defenders. Definitely,
yes. Yeah. I talked to Rod yesterday at the event, and it'll be fun to go against him and then his staff and a couple guys. I think Seattle staff is definitely one that I'm looking forward to going against. There's so much knowledge on that staff there, definitely. Those probably the two main ones, Rod and then Seattle staff. I know that playing at nighttime in D.C. is going to be different. A lot of cold weather that we're getting here in Dallas. We'll have that in D.C. those first 2-3 games. So if my kickers and my specialists get through those games early on, I think we'll shine as the season moves on to the warmer months. But I want to make sure the guys handle the ball correctly. I don't want anybody fumble snaps and the snapper doing something. That's the main thing I worry about, the messed up plays, So make sure my guys get the ball off and no balls blocked from field goals and what have you. That's the main thing I'm worried about. And if I can get that through the first 3-4 games with no hiccups, I'll be happy.
Yeah, we were in at Audi Field for the kickoff back in 2020. I think we'll be in Arlington. I think trying to drag my wife from Arlington up to DC on the weekend
Okay.
is going to be a tall task. But I want to get out to Audi this season. I thank you so much, Coach Sharper, coming on the show today. Really appreciate it and excited. I think it'll be good. You looking forward to the season? You think you guys are going to be ready to go?
We will be ready to go, definitely. We don't have any major injuries, knock on wood, and then guys are ready and really doing well, preparing and listening to what advice we have as coaches. So it's going to be fun. It's just almost shocking. It's almost 2 weeks away after I've been waiting at home in DC for like 3 months, 4 months. And then now it's only like 2 weeks away. So it's kind of like, okay, it's right around the corner. So I'm looking forward to it.
I started this podcast back when DJ and Danny bought the league. We are now at episode 130. We have yet to have an XFL ball kick. So yes, talking about anticipation, I am with you there. 130 weeks. We will get there eventually. So it's going to be exciting. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Mark.
Well, here we are back. We did the Battlehawks preview a few weeks ago. We have Pat Rifino here, XFL News Hub, getting off a Battlehawks press call today with Coach Becht. We'll get into that. We're going to talk the quarterback carousel here with the XFL and some USFL signings. But first off, congrats on the Arena Football League coming back. Did you have that on your bingo card here, February 1st of 2023?
I mean, is it the Arena League? Are they bringing back the St. Louis Stampede? Then there's the United Football League that looks – I don't know what's going on with that because that has like 14 different teams and, J.D. Runnels is going to coach there. And then I may or may not have reached out to the league and been like, you have a St. Louis team? Like, I would like to go to a game. I will pay to go to a game. And they're like, oh, yeah, details are coming out. And I was like, okay, homie, but this isn't – April's catching up. February is a short month, amigo. So
it's good. I mean, anyway, just while we hop on to record here, Schefter just tweeting out, and then I saw the Arena Football League tweeting as well. But that's exciting. I don't know if the Markcast will foray into that. I will say, if you are a passionate Arena football person, I will help co-sponsor a segment if you want to do that on the show. I don't know. I think I would not have a Mrs. Markcast and Dorothy here if we forayed into Arena football coverage as well.
Yeah, I think that might be with my travel schedule. If I'm in X town and I'm not busy, I will support the brand, but that's about it.
It's good for players though. Like I just tweeted out, competing leagues, and we have the IFL now and the AFL, competing leagues, good for players, good for coaches, good for all that. I just had my interview with Coach Sharper on here as well from the Defenders, and he was talking about that as well. Guys that are trying to get into coaching, or, hey, I can do this 4 or 5 months out of the year. I don't have to do the whole year-long grind to be in the NFL. You just got off a call with Coach Becht. How is, he seems to be the most vocal online, at least, of any of the coaches, and kind of like, hey, I'm doing my weekly update, and it's always really windy. It's always really crazy. He's in like a wind vortex. But how is Coach Becht, and how are the Battlehawks looking? Which I think I saw DraftKings had them the number one team here thus far in sports betting, the best team out there.
I think what makes Coach Becht so special is that he is a part of the media. He is doing a lot of stuff with the New York Jets and whatnot. So he has no problem being and I don't want this term to come off as negative, a social media personality, because he's got to do it anyway. Also with his son playing in the game, or playing college football at Iowa State, that kind of sparked his, what's the word? Purdy homerism maybe. So, had to support that. But I mean, Beck's always really awesome. Our interview today was pretty cool. I personally got to ask about 3 questions. One of them bringing up AJ McCarron, obviously coming to the league and whatnot, and just how he's another coach. And we talked about the AAF as well. That'll probably be broadcasted pretty soon, whether it be by the league or myself. I'm waiting on confirmation to see which is coming first. But, I mean, this is the second time I got to talk to him. I talked to him in November, one-on-one, which is probably one of the better experiences I've had working in media. And each time he's pretty awesome to work with. This time he was a lot more open. I kind of pressed on some questions last time, and he had to keep a lot of things to the chest. 100% reasonable, but overall he's been an awesome guy to talk to, especially, and it seems like, just to stroke my ego, he kind of remembered me. So it's pretty awesome that he's being very open with the media, because I think this is the only one, and I don't know because I'm not getting all the emails that so far that they've done this this open Zoom interview, and there was about 13 different guys and gals there, mostly local media as well. So I felt like, not to stroke my ego even more, I was the most football centered guy, which, you know what, I'll wear that hat. I have no problem doing that.
Well, I think, yeah, and you're still getting to that point now where, and this was back when, and we were just talking USFL before we got on here, but, when they were making all the rounds last year, and we would have the Eric Shanks of the world and Daryl Johnsons, everything, I'm like, and now with the XFL, like, I would love for any of these coaches, and they are now, I mean, they are, like, to come on shows where you don't have to spend the first 4 questions, like, so what is the XFL? Like, okay, well, you guys are kicking off, like, let's talk football. I'm really glad we're past all this, like, okay, we're checking the trademarks, and at the Battlehawks, are they coming back? Like, we can talk football, we can talk, I am not the X's and O's guys, but I bring on everyone to do that. Do you sense AJ is going to be the starting quarterback? What do you make of that? Because obviously we have other quarterback stuff to talk about today, but what did it sense?
I think AJ will definitely be week 1. We didn't really talk too much about Ryan. He did praise Ryan and Nick Tiano, their presumed QB3. But I think from what we've known, that AJ has been a backed guy, coming from News Hub insider Mike Mitchell. So, I mean, you don't bring it's kind of like that Landry Jones effect with Bob Stoops. Granted, Landry didn't do too well. He was dealing with injuries and everything like that. But AJ's a little bit younger, a little bit fresher. He didn't play in 2022. He obviously tore his ACL in 2021. But AJ was still a sought-after backup when he left the league. And then last year, maybe the injuries kind of scared people off. There was talk about his family, like wanting to spend more time with his family, which he's had his kids down there. I think there's a story about his kids wanting him to play in the XFL. And then when they did their media day a couple weeks, or a fan reach out day, whatever you want to call it, AJ was the one there. So, I mean, if you're going to bring QB1 out, it might as well bring your guy, and they brought AJ. So I know the Sea Dragons have kind of been a little bit more tighter to the chest, because Ben and Steven have done a lot of their stuff together, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I've really reached out to try to get Hazlitt, and I know that obviously they're doing he was at the town hall, or not the town hall, whatever the local event we had up here that we were at a couple weeks ago, and I know they just sent out, we're doing a select a seat event here for season ticket holders. I don't know if I'm supposed to share the exact time and all that, so I'm kind of waiting, but I do like to see that. I know Houston did one, the select a seat. I've been really trying to get Hazlitt on, just can we get 12 minutes with the man? I just feel like Seattle, we lived through the Pete Carroll, and I just feel like we have a different sense of kind of what we want in our head coach here. I thought Zorn was better back in 2020. It just doesn't feel like Hazlitt. And if the football is good, then who really cares? But I do wish Hazlitt was a little bit more doing all that. Just to check my homework. This was Seth sent this over to me, friend of the show, Seth, on his Mastodon account. The DraftKings released the team futures, worst to best. St. Louis number 1, Sea Dragons number 2, Renegades number 3, and then at the end, number 8 is the Guardians, which is expected, the Roughnecks, and then the DC Defenders, with Vegas at 5 and then San Antonio at 4.
I mean, is that the most unreasonable thing to hear? Definitely not. Maybe I'm coming a little bit biased, but my problem with all these rankings is, let's get past week 1. You know what I mean? If you told me in 2019 that Garrett Gilbert would be the guy in the AAF, I'd be like, oh, maybe, I don't know. And then the Apollos went 7-1. I thought the Renegades were going to be better. Everyone thought Connor Cook was going to be the starter for the Roughnecks. And you're like, he had a playoff game in this. He did okay. What do you expect from a rookie type thing? And PJ Walker is the face of the league. Cardale Jones coming out with the Defenders, greatest player ever, and then pretty pedestrian for the last 3 weeks of the season. Who's Jordan Teamu? You know what I mean? So could those all be right? And I have a giant egg on my face? Yeah, 100%. But at the same time, did they account for Paxton Lynch being with the team now. Like, I know everyone's got him rated at like that 2-8, but now it's like, I don't know. Paxton Lynch is an NFL quarterback. He's at 64, 65, but he's going against DeAndre Francois and Quinton Dormandy, who haven't even tasted the show. So it's like, does that add a win or two? So I don't know.
Yeah, so speaking of that, so Paxton Lynch, last we saw Paxton, he was up at the, was he with the Rough Riders up in the CFL? Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, so he was their QB3, and he was on their like 1 game inactive list. And I don't know, I think there was some like discrepancy, and I don't want to get too, like I read one thing about the vaccination stuff, then other stuff, he wasn't very good, and it's like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they got down to 3 or 4 QBs during the season in 2021. Yeah, I know this year they played 3 QBs. So,
well, the CFL is hard because so Paxton Lynch announced Sunday, signed to the Guardians. Interesting enough, I had Shane Matthews on last week, the Guardians quarterbacks coach, and really kind of pressed him like, hey, what are you guys doing at the position here? And he said, we're keeping our eyes out. We're even looking to the CFL. Obviously, Paxton, drafted here in the NFL back in the day. But the CFL really prides itself on, like, we make it really, really hard for Americans, but, like, really hard for quarterbacks. Like Taylor Cornelius here, XFL 2020, just finally kind of getting his foot here in the XFL or in the CFL with the Elks, and he's been up there now. This will be his third year kind of working towards that. So, I don't fault Paxton for going up there and not succeeding right away. I mean, look at Johnny Manziel and all of that. But were you surprised to see, I guess not surprised to see Guardians make a move because they needed to make a move, but were you surprised to see them go with Paxton Lynch?
I mean, Paxton wanted to go to the XFL from last year, but I think he also needed to play football. So regardless of these football wars going on, Paxton put together some good games. His stats weren't as great as actually how he played, because if you even look in that week 1 game when they played the Gamblers, there was like 4 drops that I counted off watching his week 1 performance, and his stat line doesn't show that. I think one of the drops led to an interception. He's a week 10 player of the week. In the last week of the USFL, granted they were playing the Maulers, but he's still performing at a pretty high level. And for the alt football space, of course, and we can throw snot at the Maulers all we want, but I think they sent like the most guys to the NFL, and they've brought back some decent players as well. So, I mean, these guys are professional football players. They've all played at a Division I level. Not all, but a lot of them have played at Division I level. So, I mean, and then look at who the Guardians have right now. Not the most attractive bunch of guys coming in. So why not give Paxton Lynch a shot? If he wants to play, like, go for it.
And forgive me, so we obviously, and then he was with the Panthers there, and they had what was it? Because Shea Patterson was taking first ride, and then Paxton was like, I get my years flip flopped of who was the order of all this stuff. Lynch seemed like, wasn't remembered fondly, right, with the Panthers, a leg injury. Why was he allowed to sign with the Guardians? Was he released after that? What was his contract? Because he didn't get picked up to any NFL practice squads, right?
I believe that was the coveted December 31st, let's wait type situation. Yeah. He was only removed from the Fox Sports website. It was actually never announced that he was leaving. Per two guys I talked to connected to the Panthers, he's been wanting to go there since about middle of 2022 after the season. It was something he had his eyes set on, and I don't know if it's the perfect spot for him going to the Guardians, because I think everyone thinks they are the worst team. But something when we're evaluating these quarterbacks is, okay, I don't really care how you're, especially for the NFL, but how are you throwing the out route? So if you're throwing a crisp out route and the ball looks good and the ball placement's good, and your receiver ran a 9-yard out instead of a 7-yard out, and it gets picked off and brought to the house, is that your fault? Like, it's kind of why, a lot of people didn't like the Texas Tech quarterbacks, because, they threw the ball 70 times a game, but they're just throwing bubbles and slants, So coaches in the NFL aren't dumb. They evaluate the throws. They evaluate how these guys are reading the field. If the guy is making the right read, they are going to get an opportunity at the next level.
Like you said, I think maybe the Guardians not the right position or maybe not the perfect spot for him. But we'll talk here about another quarterback that wants to start. But if Paxton wants to start, I think Orlando makes sense that way. Do you think Paxton still has whatever that people see in him? And obviously, having NFL experience is valuable in any of these leagues. And we'll talk about Brett Hundley as well. But is it a worthwhile endeavor to bring in Paxton here? We got 2 weeks before before kickoff.
Yeah, 100% recognition. Name recognition helps well, and I think he's a Florida guy, if I'm not mistaken. So now you have two factors: people who don't want to live in Colorado because it's cold, move to Florida, or the South. So now you're bringing in more butts in the seats type thing. So I hate to say this, but if the Guardians go 0-10, but Paxton Lynch is putting up 300 yards a game, people aren't really going to care NFL-wise that what he did in the past. They're going to be like, okay, this guy has something. Let's bring him in as that QB3 and see what happens.
So I'm because when I thought people he went to Memphis. I thought people were tweeting about him being from Florida as well.
I think he's from Florida, but yeah, he did go to Memphis.
Okay.
He played, who was his backup?
He played high school at Trinity Christian in Florida. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
His backup was the kid Jay Stewart who lit a spliff during FCF. Oh. Fun fact on that.
So I don't, it does seem funny to me that I've talked with lots of people, both in the news hub and even last week with Kyle Nash on the show and talking. Everyone seems pretty down on Florida, on the Orlando Guardians. It is just kind of funny that, it's the Danny Garcia team, rebrand and bringing back, moving the Guardians down there. But any thoughts on that? I want to talk to Brian Scott of it all, but any other thoughts on the Paxton Lynch? And I don't see where else he would have fit. I don't see any other position for him if he wants to have a guaranteed kind of week one start. Yeah,
and that's the thing too, is he might not start week one, but he'll come in week one. You know what I mean? If Francois or Dormandy doesn't perform, all these other teams, they kind of have the 1A or 1A 1B type situation where it does appear to me that okay, will Paxton start? Yeah. But now it's week 5 or week 6 or something like that. Now it kind of, it takes his game film and it condenses it, because now it's he put together 3 good games, but so did Cooper Rush. You know what I mean? So I personally feel that with any of these all football quarterbacks, all they need is 8 good games. If they put together 8 good games, they will at least have a workout. And then whatever happens in the workout, and even if they don't get signed by that team, they're going to be on that short list for other workouts during the season when they do practice squad, cuts and signings and whatnot, or when, God forbid, a Kyler Murray situation comes in, and then they're just like, hey, man, what are you doing this week? You want to play football? Okay, cool. And then now
Taylor Heineke's in the world.
Yeah, that's, TH4 is the perfect thing. All it was is a connection with Ron Rivera in Carolina. He didn't even play in the XFL, no snaps. Was kind of jumped over by Nick Fitzgerald, and now he's definitely an NFL quarterback and probably in the top 35.
Why did Paxton Lynch and Brett Hundley here not come in till right now? Are we not wanting to do the whole training camp? Because obviously the December 31st and all that. Why not? Why start now and not 3 weeks ago?
I have no idea. Part of me wants to think they kind of were doing the sit and wait type thing. Brett was probably playing the game with the Ravens and the Saints and all these other teams he's been with, and they're just like, hey, I'm available. What are you doing? It's not outlandish to think maybe, depending on what Aaron Rodgers did, that he would go back to Green Bay if that person, all speculation, of course. But that practice squad contract for Brett would be around $300,000 with, Paxton probably in that same range. A rookie gets that 207. And then there's always those game day activations, which add another 50 to 70 grand to their check. So great, they can come to the XFL or USFL, they're definitely getting paid more between that 60 and 100K for less weeks of work. But why put that stress on your body when, you know, you can go kick to the Lions for a couple months and then, be on that team. Like Steven Montez picked up an extra 40 grand and then came back to the Dragons like everything was cool. James Morgan did the same thing for the USFL.
So the other quarterback we're talking here, and this is, I mean, just talking timing here of just, sometimes I'd rather be lucky than good, or lucky than smart. We had Shane Matthews talking to Orlando Guardians last week, and we figured that out. Brian Scott, friend of the show, was going to come on last week, scheduled, and the media people and camps shifted, and we're meeting different times, and we know this week they're dealing with inclement weather and all that. So we get Luis Perez kind of the last minute because schedules just didn't work out, that they had meetings and stuff. And so they said, we're going to get you Luis Perez, because I said, I got to have somebody. We've gone this all week. I got to have somebody. We get Luis Perez. He was great. I really enjoyed catching up with him. Wake up Monday morning to lots of different reports, some, from Brian and some online. And what we know, Brett Huntley signed, with the Vipers. The league hasn't tweeted it out yet. Formerly, right? He was with Green Bay, and then Brian, presumably not with the Vipers anymore, if reports are to be believed. That either is off the roster, or is asking mutual departure, kind of all that stuff. Does that mean Brian didn't want to take a quarterback number 2? Does it mean that Luis Perez, now, I guess, also friend of the show, is going to be quarterback 2? Brian didn't want to be quarterback 3. What did you make of? It was a really crazy Monday all around.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably what Brian perceived happened. There's what the Vipers perceived happened, and then there's something in the truth. And I mean, I hate to take this middle road right now because I don't want to speak on Brian's behalf. I don't want to speak on the league's behalf. But I mean, ultimately, it came down to, in my opinion, Brian probably may have been sold a bill of goods, or felt that the situation was not the best thing for his career, and he's doing what he thinks is the best thing for his career. And don't forget Mr. Luis Perez, Mr. Alt Football himself. So, there's a little bit, that room gets a little bit stuffy, and Brett Hundley has played in NFL games before, so that might not be the best situation for him. So I'd like to see Brian come back to the Stars. I think they only have one quarterback on their roster. I think he would have been the MVP, or not the MVP, maybe the MVP, but the all USFL quarterback, hands down, with him and Bart Andrus working together. So I don't think it's a crazy assumption that Brian could come back to the USFL if the situation, lines up what's best for his career. And I think that's what he needs to do personally. If he feels that this isn't the best move for his career, that's on him.
Well, and yeah, because certainly now, where the Guardians would have been maybe an opportunity to go to here, certainly not right now with Paxton Lynch. And like I said, I think you put it great. There's two sides to the truth. The actual truth kind of is somewhere in the middle there. I think Twitter and a lot of the things we're on now, it seems like absolutes. And, this was going on, or this. And I even saw, people like, what happened to the Brian interview last week and all that. And I'm like, I just know what I'm told from the league. I'm told from the league, we can do it this day. We can't do it this day. Here we go. And so, did they see this coming or not? I don't know. I don't know when this decision was made. I just know that I still think it's odd, and maybe they'll tweet it out tomorrow or whatever. But Brett Huntley with the Vipers and starting there. Do you like that move? Do you like, did the Vipers need that bolster of the former NFL quarterback?
I mean, I don't know, because I'm biased towards Perez. We know who Hundley is, and maybe we get a couple like Garrett Gilbert type years from him, a couple starts and a couple, activations and whatnot. But for Luis Perez, who's been a staple to all football, including Scott, because he's been with the Spring League for years upon years, I would have liked to seen either one of those guys kind of just like, we're all in. And granted, you have to evaluate talent and whatnot, but I don't want to see a Matt McGloin situation where, because Matt McGloin and Landry Jones are two different like situations. Landry was hurt and did put up serviceable numbers and was probably a good team guy. He's a Bob Stoops guy. I mean, Matt McGloin is coming from, he was recommended from Andy Reid for the league. Well, I think he had a connection with Gilbride and everything like that. So I just don't want to see that Hundley kind of goes into like, yep, this is just a guy we have type thing. Now, granted, I don't think Hundley is going to be a bad teammate by any means, but I didn't think Matt McGloin would be like that either because, coming from Penn State, and I consider that a pretty high character school. And I believe he was there, Bill O'Brien's first year when they had all that stuff with the scandals and everything like that. So I'd like to believe we just caught McGloin on a bad day type thing. But regardless, if there's some parallels between that, I kind of feel bad for Luis Perez in that he's possibly going through this again.
Well, and Doug Whaley came out, a couple weeks, I mean, it was before the quarterback selection show, and they're like, we want to build our own stars and all of this. And it's that balance, right? And I've watched wrestling for years. And is it easier to build the indie guy up that we signed here in the WWE? You're like, hey, we could pay, $500,000 and bring in, whoever from AEW, right? Like, let's pop shit that way. It is just interesting to me. And I know the timing, like you said, people are playing waiting games with their teams, but like, some of these guys have been in Texas now for a month, right? And we're here, and it's like, all right, here you go. Like, Paxton Lynch is your quarterback. And I'd be like, if I was DeAndre Francois, I'd be like, bro, like, I was in Vegas doing the selection show, and I've been doing media stuff, and I've been here, and and then this guy's flying in now. I mean, I get it, and I get politics and all of that, but it's that balance of building the guys that we want versus, hey, well, we got two NFL quarterbacks here. Like, let's get them on the show. Let's get them on the teams.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to come off as crass, but stinks to stink. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter if you're the best quarterback in the room. It doesn't matter who they bring in, right? So if all this nonsense is going on and DeAndre Francois is able to power through it regardless, like Paxton Lynch isn't getting the job because he's Paxton Lynch. He's going to get the job because he's better, because in the end, regardless of if the XFL goes on for 20 years or 1 year, all these coaches are tied to these players. And that's what and that's why I hate the tanking thing, because even though this guy might be a scrub on the field or this coach isn't that good, they still need to like perform because that's their next contract. They're living contract to contract. So if you can do it, great, do it, because the coach needs you to do it because he wants a job, because he wants, I think there are certain coaches and players like, Jeff Fisher. I think he's pretty content in life. He's going up to Montana, fly fishing, all that stuff. I don't think he really cares about going to the NFL. If it happens, maybe on like one of those interim, like, yeah, I'll come in and help out, for a couple weeks, great. But I don't think, a guy like Jeff Fisher cares about that. Well, you have Reggie Barlow, who's been coaching in the college ranks for years. He needs that to happen. Terrell Buckley, I believe he's been bouncing around, high school. He needs this to work out. So I don't think there's much bias towards like, okay, man, yeah, I know you've been here for a month, but if you want to go play in the NFL, I can tell you some stories about guys who made the 53-man roster and then got cut and then were unemployed for 4 months. So
I just hope whatever the truth is with all this week, and I certainly hope this, like, it's a small world, and I don't see Brian going, if Brian wants to start, I don't see anywhere right now in the XFL. I mean, give it a couple weeks and maybe something happens when the season kicks off and people get hurt or whatever. I don't know. I don't see a natural, like, okay, well, we're just going to go sign him to the Defenders right now. I think there are a lot of USFL teams that would take him. I just hope whatever happened this week that, like, the world is not that big. And I hope that, not too many waves were made, if that makes sense, of like all these various stories and everything going on. I just hope that we were able to kind of protect, because people have, what is it? Memories, memories last forever and all this kind of stuff. So I hope that all works out, but I do wish the best for Brian, and I think he'll find somewhere. I mean, I think he'll play football here this year. I don't know if it's the XFL or the USFL.
Yeah. I mean, I hate to say this because these two cases are completely different, but if you're good at football, no one cares. Like I think there's a guy in Cleveland who's playing in football right now who's, had a questionable past. So
I think there's a guy that is playing in Denver right now that I lived with for 10 years. That's much less questionable past. That was just kind of an odd dude. And like, we all knew that in Seattle for years. It's like Russell Wilson, but hey, man, Super Bowl, whatever.
When you're winning, no one
matter.
cares about you doing high knees and making terrible TikToks.
The Denver Broncos fight. Before we let you go, the original intent was to talk USFL signings here. Rebolstering. We are trying to do USFL coverage here. We had Canton and all that in the Detroit hub last week. Any big thoughts for you? Teams rebuilding here and getting guys back from the XFL now to the draft and all that.
So I like what the Stallions are doing because they obviously big thing kept their quarterbacks. Majority of their running backs are coming. They signed a guy who's been on and off the Dolphins practice squad. But if you look at their positions, they've been able to retain a decent amount of the guys coming back. So they obviously won the championship with this core. They've brought in a couple NFL caliber players to help out on the offensive line. And even though they lost 2 or 3 offensive linemen to the XFL, they had guys start last year in reserve roles. So everyone that was an offensive lineman on the team started one game. And then they've brought in some guys with NFL experience who played in these games. And don't take the preseason for just, just nonsense games because they're still out there. They're still in camp. They're still working. Practice squad. If I was a left tackle on the Texans during J.J. Watt's years, even if I'm getting messed up by J.J. Watt, I'm still going against J.J. Watt. And you're with Dwayne Brown, who's going to be like, hey, man, when he does this, duck that, and that all adds up. We're not just having guys from Division III schools or Division II schools who went to a rookie mini camp where they're not really going as hard because it's just they're going hard as far as their effort. But I mean, I need to see how you can run. Can you bend? How do you move okay, you can't do that. Okay, man, you can go to the other side of this. So go to the pool of make-believe, hold the practice dummy. So the Stallions have done a really good job. The Panthers did a good job bringing in more offensive linemen. I really like that. Cole Kelly was signed to the Showboats. That's a big move right there. So, he's definitely an NFL caliber player, big dude, and he replaces Jordan Teamu as well. A lot more mobile. People give him credit for. I think Memphis wants to go with Brady White because he is a coach at the University of Memphis during the offseason, but I mean, I think Kelly is going to be the number one guy, and that's a dude that could easily jump to the NFL.
There you go. So you feel like they, even with it, we have the big, war of attrition here, and everyone said that, there's enough talent here for both of these leagues so far. You think even offensive linemen, which has always kind of been a concern.
I mean, if I'm a USFL GM, and you could see the XFL guys doing this as well, is that the USFL is in an advantage in this sense of the XFL is solidifying their rosters in November, the supplemental draft. The NFL season's still going on. Now, you take a guy who was with the practice squad all year, and now he's released, and he's like, man, I don't want to sign a futures contract. Might as well go to the USFL because the XFL, is kind of short up. And even though I'm better than these guys in the XFL, I can go to the USFL, play my games. There's analytical data now that proves that USFL players can translate to the NFL. It's happened. They had 11 guys playing games. They ended the season with 6 or 7 guys on active rosters. They sent 57 guys on contracts, and at times they had 28 people on an NFL payroll. There's data, especially if you're a kicker or a punter or a long snapper, because the wear and tear is way less. Now we can talk about the season, for an offensive lineman. Yes, that wear and tear is a lot because now you're going from July to drinking from the fire hose in August. But in the end, if you're good and you're healthy, you're gonna get an opportunity if the team likes you. Scouts are gonna be watching this as well.
Pat, has your XFL fanboy mouth? Are you sick of having to talk about the USFL for as long as you just have?
No, I'll talk USFL all day. I mean, my
Pat
DMs
gets a bad rap. Pat gets a bad rap.
Yeah, my DMs might, say I don't talk about the USFL that much, but I mean, if you're coming at me from an anonymous profile, I mean, that says more about you than me. And it's just to give a little tidbit of my life, my personal life. It's not hard to figure out where the anonymous profiles come from. So you take that for what it's worth.
Well, Pat, this was good today. Good spot here. We'll figure out. We have a bunch of big shows here coming up with the kickoff and all that stuff. But I appreciate it. We're going to do USFL and then this quarterback. I thought that was good in the back. So triple threat here today. Pat Rifino really doing the Lord's work. I appreciate it.
I'm trying. So, and for as much as an XFL fanboy that I am, I will be at several USFL games. So I don't know if they'll take my money, to go to a game because, I'm of the different church, obviously. But, I'm really excited to see the Panthers, really excited to see the Showboats, and I'm really excited to see the Stallions and whoever they're playing when I'm there. So, I mean, more leagues, more football, more things to talk about.
Yeah, and then the next thing you know, we'll be the Arena Football fanboys, and then we'll be and everything else. So, Pat Rifino, XFL News Hub, covering the Battlehawks, everything else. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks, man.
Well, I am thrilled today. We're getting back, USFL, hub announcements, everything coverage. Now we have Christian McFarland here with the Birmingham Stallions back for season 2. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, man. Just ready to get back into it. How about you?
I'm good. Now, I don't like you too much because my team was the Philadelphia Stars, and so we did suffer defeat on that. I had a lot of friends on that team, so I kind of, and I felt like Birmingham, you guys had enough, you had enough support. I had to throw my
right, yeah.
What was season 1 like for you? Obviously interesting all the way around. How was it like for you?
It was great. Honestly, it was a good experience just to get back into football again. But it was much, I feel like, cleaner than a lot of us thought it was going to be. But it was just great, man. Especially like you said, being from the with the hometown team, man, with the fans and everything. It was just a great experience.
Better than you expected? Worse than you expected?
A little bit better. I mean, right along what I would expect. But it was a little bit, like I said, cleaner. I feel like it was ran properly. But first year there's a lot of kinks and things like that, and I feel like they did good with moving, and adjusting on the fly.
What excited you to be a part of the USFL and kind of the spring alternative football?
Just another opportunity to play football again and get a stepping stone to trying to get to the NFL. So that was the main thing, and then as well as the timing, you get a chance to play ball while also, still leaving yourself the opportunity to play in the NFL. So yeah.
Talk about just being involved with Fox, everybody, even now, this week I'm watching the press conferences for all the new hubs, Kurt Menefee, everybody. Talk about just having all of that around and knowing that you're kind of a part of that brand.
It feels great, honestly, because there's big things. Season 2, they've released some news about the hub cities, different caliber players joining and things like that. So it's cool to be a part of, and just knowing that this league's going in the right direction.
Yeah, when you looked around, season 1, and now obviously we're still getting teams figured out and everything for season 2. Talk about the quality of the other players you're playing with.
Yeah, that was a huge thing. I was, when I was first in the draft pool, quote unquote, you got to see some of the other players in there. And then when the draft came around, you started to see a lot more of the, kind of more well-known guys getting drafted. And so that was a huge thing to see, just because, the level of competition can either, make or break a league. If it doesn't look like it's as competitive as it needs to be, then it won't be as entertaining. So I feel like there was a great level of competition, and it's only continuing to get better.
Well, that's the thing. I had my qualms about USFL as kind of, business side. I never thought the football was lacking. I thought you guys went out there and, just really, whooped your asses off on that. Like for an outsider, we get all these people poo-pooing on and, if it's not the NFL, I cover the CFL too. So we hear it from all sides, but, someone from the outside and wanting to poo-poo the talent level and everybody else involved with the league, both on the field and on the staffing, what would you say?
to say to that, it just, a lot of the guys came from the NFL that are in this league, as well as, a lot of guys that got signed this year to the NFL, and then, a good portion of them sticking, whether that be on practice squad or, active roster. So it just proves that, the caliber of guys that we have in this league can play at the highest level of the NFL. So the competition level is not lacking at all.
How important is it to have, whether it's the XFL now, or the USFL, whatever, to have these alternate places for you guys, like you said, depending on timing and everything, but to have, 3 months, you get tape, you're, in game shape, you're ready to go, you're around everybody that gets you guys. How important is that?
That's huge because I feel like with other sports professionally, you have like the G League for the NBA or, stuff like that. I feel like it's a huge thing to just open up, just to give people the opportunity. Because, a lot of people talk about they're slept on and all that kind of stuff. So this kind of gives you the opportunity to, show your worth. Or, in a different situation, it just gives somebody that's might be a little older or something, just the opportunity to play ball again. They can play at a high level. But, everyone's goals are different. So I feel like it's a good league for people with various different goals.
Do you sense that, chip on the shoulder, across the board of just got, like you said, guys, I got to prove my worth. I got to get my shot again. I got to get back. I mean, do you sense that with your teammates? You all feel that extra motivation?
Yeah, we know, we try not to focus on statistics and things like that. Like, I need a pick this week or blah, blah, blah. But we definitely know, like, this is our time to perform. Just, it's basically an interview, to see if you're going to continue to play on that team, like get re-signed or, go to the NFL. So, yeah.
In terms of, Skip Holtz, coach, it seems like players want to run through a wall for him. I mean, seems like a guy that has totally bought into, I'm part of this and we're building this culture. And, it obviously helps being in Birmingham with that. But talk about the coach and staff and everyone that you guys have on the team.
Yeah. I love Skip. I don't know who I was talking to. I think it was one of my friends who's on a different team. I was telling him, like, I actually love Skip. Like, he's a player's coach, but he has he knows how to, manage a relationship between a player and a coach to where, like, he's a cool guy, but we know that it's business, and that he's still our coach and that I'm still his player. But yeah, he's a great guy. And then as far as our team, I feel like just early on, with his help, we built a culture, winning culture, and that's how we were able to win. We just all loved each other. We molded together and, ended up getting the job done.
In terms of returning for season 2, I mean, any hesitation, any thought besides that, or were you kind of bought in for that once, kind of seeing other opportunities and everything?
No, I was pretty much bought in. I re-signed, the option thing earlier last year. But, with other opportunities of alternative leagues, there was some opportunity there, but I feel like, we just had something special in Birmingham. So giving it another shot is definitely worth it.
Talking with your other players that are returning, thought process and what's the conversation been like there?
Some guys that are in the same situation as me where they signed back, and then other guys where, they're trying to figure out if they're going to come back or not. It was tough for some people just because, XFL's new and, that kind of thing. But for the most part, we've gotten the majority of our players back that, aren't in the NFL or, a couple guys went to the XFL, but for the most part, we got the majority of our players back. So they kind of bought in with what we got going on too.
In terms of the CBA, you guys being able to work towards that, we had the player reps and everybody on the show. But how did that feel, just knowing that you guys were all able to kind of come and get all that going and have all these kind of the pay increase and all these kind of checks in place?
Yeah, it felt great, because as players from our angle, we kind of feel like we don't have as much, to do with that kind of stuff. So when we voted on the player reps and then we were able to kind of have our hand in the negotiations. Although, it wasn't me specifically, it was, guys that are speaking for me and they're kind of communicating with us too. So it felt good just knowing that we're not just being told kind of what we got going on. We at least get to have some type of say.
Is it helpful to have, XFL and obviously Fan Control Football, CFL, like these competing entities, just to know that like you do have options, like you're not locked into one? Obviously, you're happy in Birmingham, but just the idea that these leagues do have to work to give you guys the best spot that they can, right? Where if 2 years ago, if this came up, maybe there wouldn't be, they'd be able to kind of hold you to stuff without having, competition there.
Right. I feel like it's a good thing. Competition is always a good thing, in my opinion. And just I feel like we did good, and USFL being not trying to do too much, but just to do enough, just to be able to do things like adding new hub cities and things like that. I feel like it's good to have competition though, because like you said, if there's no competition, then there's nothing that they have to do, to kind of keep us.
Stallions, basically ran the table all last season, dominated. Yep. You had a wonderful, championship game and the interception, all that. How do you take, season one? Now, there's a lot of expectations now. Birmingham, I think, is, if they didn't have already, going to have their sights on it. How do you guys look towards season two?
I mean, we held ourselves to a high standard during the season, which is why we had the level of success that we had. And I feel like a big piece of that is we have a lot of guys returning. So with this majority of our coaches still there, and then the majority of our players, kind of just staying bought into the system that we had in place. And then, not listening to any outside noise of, all the other teams or the media or stuff like that.
Couple here before we go. Off season for you, coming out of the one, what does that look like and getting ready for this, your day-to-day life right now, post season one, getting into season two for people that are fans of yours?
Right now, it's kind of just, getting back in that kind of practice / game shape. So like recently, I started doing my field workouts with my helmet on again, just try to get back into it. But I've been working out this entire time. But, they opened up room for us to go down to Birmingham and kind of work out and things like that. But I still have my baby's only 4 months right now. So I was like, I'm going to take that time to be with her. But yeah, just working out, increasing the amount of conditioning that I'm doing, and just trying to get my body conditioned ready for camp.
Yeah, I remember the story, right, where your wife, was it heat or what was it that happened? And that's all okay, and your child and everything. But what was that all like at the end of season one? Because I remember that did get some media attention.
Yeah, I think it was like some heat exhaustion. She loved to be in the front row watching me. But 6-7 months pregnant, she kind of got to get up near the booth. But yeah, everything was good though with that. It was just, she just honestly needed some more water, some shade. But our baby came healthy in September, so she's all good now. She's running the house right now, so we've got our hands full.
Yeah, what's your baby's name?
Her name is Shiloh.
Shiloh. Yeah, there you go. Born in September here. Now you're going to you got to go compete here, and hopefully maybe you get, USFL is fan friendly. Maybe you can bring, or family friendly. Maybe you can bring in, get a child in there as well, do a little cheering.
Oh yeah. She's that. No, they're coming for sure. She's got to watch her dad play. So, we'll be more prepared this time. We got the fans that connect around your neck and stuff like that. We'll make sure she's cool, but yeah, she's definitely going to be coming to the games.
Well, Christian, I really appreciate it. Anything else you got working on? Anything else you want to let us know before you get out of here?
No, not really, man. We're just, we're just working. I was actually talking to a couple of the DBs. We still got our group chat, and, we're just we might get together one time or something like that just before the season starts, just so we can get back in our flow. But yeah, no, nothing else.
Does that help build that camaraderie? And obviously this year it'll be the 4 hubs, but you'll still get that. But where you guys were all there and living, I mean, it's almost like you're off to college here for a few months. Did that help kind of build those bonds across your team? Oh,
definitely. Yeah. We still talk I still talk to some of my other teammates, but as far as the DBs, I mean, we talk in our group message, weekly. So we kind of never lost it. Even if, some guys are in different leagues or, Tay's still in the NFL. So it's like we still talk within our group chat, and that definitely helps to build that chemistry on the field also.
Well, Christian, I really appreciate it here. Best of luck. We'll be cheering. I got to figure out here with, flying out to some of these USFL games to get some coverage again this year. But I really appreciate your time today, and good luck next year.
Yes, sir. Definitely. Thank you.
Well, when we have work to do is when we bring in the professor, and we needed a theme to carry the show this week. We have Chris Jones and Christian McFarland and Pat Rifino. We have Coach Sharper from the Defenders, but we needed a theme. We needed some work, so we called the professor Andrew Murray here. How are you doing, sir?
Well, I think this theme will be very appropriate as we'll get into, but considering what I talked about today, actually, I mentioned this very theme to someone else, not in this sphere, but like to somebody else in kind of a different context. So I'm really excited about this. I'm always down to talk about anything.
The last time I saw the professor, we broke actual literal bread together across the table from each other in San Diego. This is a fun exercise today. So you're either going to be all in on this or not. This is a way to constructively criticize, and this is going to be both for the XFL and the USFL. We are going to draft, and I'll backlog all this of how we got to this, but we are drafting the alt football fans Bill of Rights today. And this was inspired by I will share here. It was inspired by the Jacksonville Sharks of the NAL. They are in the Arena Football League, and the AFL coming back today. It's all full circle here. We're going to be wall-to-wall coverage all year. Hopefully they don't. I think they're playing in the spring. We'll see how that works out. But they have a mission statement and a fans Bill of Rights here. And it's, we'll get into all this. And we thought, what do we want from the USFL season 2? What do we want from the XFL season 1 into season 2? And this is going to be a fun activity today. We are fighting for our rights. Andy Murray, has your pop ever caught you smoking and said no way?
Funny story about that, actually. No, I mean, if you're talking about the Apple method, but if you catch my drift, but no, I mean, I'm interested, like, if you're talking about a Bill of Rights, does any of like the major professional leagues have this? Like, does the NFL have a Bill of Rights amongst its fan groups? Because I'm not aware of there being one.
That's why I like this. I like, because this is, and I've always, and I don't know if USFL brass, if XFL brass, this is a different thing than like the major 4, the major 5 sports. Like we are neat, like we are all football. We can build to that, right? But the relationship is the same with the CFL, and we'll get into this. The CFL does a far better job of a lot of this stuff for all their criticisms that they get in terms of, this is our league. If you're Canadian, I'm just kidding, but like, this is our league and this is our fans. And like, this is the relationship we want to have. And so this is great. We've come on here. We're bitching and moaning. We're 2 weeks to kick off. And hopefully this will be a little bit more evergreen content to go along with the Battlehawks and training camp stuff we're talking about. But feel free. We're going to make our own today. And then we'll give context here. And then let us know in the comments, like, do you like this? Do we, what things do you want to see? Because I think it's important. I know people listen to this show. I know people listen, the Mark show and everyone else that does it. And so I think it's important for us to vocalize it in constructive ways and not just, like trolling on Twitter, if that makes sense.
Or Discord, or spamming it. No spam, please.
So we'll switch on over here. And so we have copied over the mission statement from the Arena Football League. And I would like to see even the XFL and the USFL kind of have, mission statement. What are we here? We know the X stands for the intersection between, hopes and dreams or whatever it is. But, what is like the mission statement of the XFL? Do you, and this goes for the USFL, I think the USFL's current mission statement is, we put football on TV, people watch. But would you like to see either the XFL or the USFL have more of a defined mission statement where the Arena League here says, in furtherance of our mission statement, we, the players, coaches, official staff, and owners of the Arena Football League, this would be the Alt Football League, are thankful to the fans that we serve, appreciate their support, and dedicate ourselves collectively to protecting their rights as the greatest sports and entertainment fans in the world. Would you like to see the XFL or the USFL have more of a defined mission statement?
I'm a little surprised that the XFL doesn't have one already, just because of how much of a PR machine they are, especially with trying to create and hold appearances consistently that is kind of consistent with their branding and their messaging. And I would like to at least know, maybe from their end, what they think is the extent and purpose of their league, right? I think I mentioned it on your show maybe months ago about, okay, you're going to have the CFL, USFL, and the XFL all trying to coexist. Whether you like it or not, they're all going to try and coexist at least for a year together. Each one has to separate themselves into their own categories. What is the not only the messaging, but what is the style, the brand, the kind of the mantra of each league? What is going to keep them afloat in terms of which fan base they're going to appeal to and which sort of crowd that they're going to bring in each time? So yeah, I think for the XFL's purposes, that would be probably pretty productive. Now, the only thing is I wonder if that they just are going to let the play on the field kind of explain all that. And it feels like the USFL did that last year where they just said, here's football, figure it out. This is what we, but you could tell like what their mantra was just by basically how they're operating their business. Right. And I think maybe the XFL is kind of leaning that way too so far, but I would think that they would be able to have an idea or at least a branding or like just again, like right, you see right here, a mission statement. And I would think that like Danny Garcia and The Rock are the absolute premier individuals you would want having to put out that message. Right. So it is a bit interesting that hasn't come out yet.
Was it? And so they had the town hall this week, the players and, the staff, coaches, kind of all that stuff on Monday, I think it was, before the snowstorm. They were going to have the ESPN test and stuff this week. And a lot of and I know that this was for the players, right? We have Jerry there and Danny and DJ, and we care about like the Rocks, like, we care about you guys so much, and we're doing everything we can to set this up, and you're going to be able to provide for your family for generations. And that's great, right? We're here, we're training camp, we're in the midst of all that, but with it being in Arlington, for the next 3 years here, right? And not having these local, we have the Seattle's, Select a Seat or whatever event here coming up on Saturday, but not having, the in the market, with like Ryan Gustafson we had back in Seattle back in 2020, and he would do his weekly addresses. Like, we're talking to you guys, like, I think you need to serve the players, obviously, first and foremost, but you need to serve the fans too. And I don't know, outside of if you're following the XFL on Twitter, Instagram, or thank God now TikTok here this week, they've got that going. We'll talk about that. Like, I just don't know what like connection you as a fan, unless you follow this in 2020, what branding you're getting for you of like, yeah, I'm going to take my family out. I mean, even the USFL, bring your family and kids out. We're cheap tickets, come out. It's entertainment. We're going to put the games on back to back. You'll be able to do all this stuff. We're going to have a concert. We're going to have like, I would like to see them play both sides of that fence. And it just feels, I know they're in Texas and all of that right now, but when do we get that fan front facing that's not like the ESPN pre-tape stuff with Danny and The Rock?
Yeah, no, I agree. And also just more community building, being able to interact with each and every individual community, and also being able to appeal to certain things. Like, one of the things that I kind of wanted to run away with here, and maybe I'll just get into it now. So we just had the conference championships, right, in the NFL. And there's a lot of talk going into those games about, potentially in the future having neutral site games and potentially having these games where the value of the tickets are driven up exponentially and fans are going to have to pay out of their own pocket, even season ticket holders of those teams, to have to go travel and go to those games. I think as a league like this, for example, the USFL, you could appeal to the idea of like, hey, we're not trying to, shortchange you out of like something because of your loyalty. We want to be able to appeal to your loyalty because, quite frankly, the fact that, I mean, again, this is a league that went away for 2 straight years. There are people like us who have been waiting almost 3 full years for this to come back. If it wasn't starting in March, if it started in March, it would have been 3 full years to the calendar date. So I think that's a crowd that you absolutely need to be able to appeal to and just kind of acknowledge as saying, hey, we appreciate your loyalty. Thank you for staying with us this entire time and believing in this product and believing in trusting us, basically, into creating something and returning something that you really fell in love with 3 years ago. Or even maybe before, in 2001, which, that's a different product. But it's just, that's kind of that idea that I agree with you. I'd like to see a little bit more appealed to on the fan side. But right now, it seems like they're just putting almost all of their energy more into the player side of it, which, again, you and I as media members, we love the players and we want them to have opportunities, of course. But for other people who don't follow it on the regular, you need to be able to, go back to that pipeline and really kind of go back to the well and be able to appeal to those people as well.
It was on my interview with Coach Sharper here from the Defenders. It was interesting because he goes, like, we're just really ready to go. And I remember I got hired a couple of months ago and like, we've just kind of been waiting and like, we're ready to go. I go, I held my tongue on the interview. It was like, buddy, like, not buddy, I should say that, but, like, sir, there are fans that have waited, 27, 28 months now for this. And I certainly, yes. And we are all, and everyone that's coming on board is working tremendously hard, but like, we are all a part of this. So we've been waiting. And, this is episode 130 without any XFL game kickoff to talk about. We made it through 2 seasons of the Spring League, 2 seasons of the CFL. We've had the USFL, fan control football. But, this is 130 weeks now in a row of talking about a product that has not hit the field since we did that. The first part here, so then the Bill of Rights. So that's the mission statement. We would like to have the XFL have a mission statement. Bill of Rights. We believe that every fan deserves our very best effort on a consistent basis, on every play on the field, every action in the stands, every call to our office, and every involvement in our community. And so for the two sides here, USFL, XFL, I think is succeeding in this right now. And okay, we have social media people. We're able to communicate that way, right? We're bringing in, we have the team directors and the directors of marketing and all of that. We'll get into issues the XFL has. In the USFL, how many dedicated people, except like maybe Daryl Johnston, I saw retweeting a little bit this week following the Canton Hub and all that. Like, how many USFL people outside of, I guess, Darren James, which isn't really known publicly as like the face of how many people does USFL have that are like going out, promoting, engaging, talking to fans, doing that interaction?
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I kind of almost had a sense of a timeline. We were talking about the XFL timeline. Well, I was thinking about the timeline with USFL, thinking about when are they going to come back and start promoting the league again during the offseason. And they kind of waited almost around the same time they started doing announcements the last time when they were just trying to get the season started, the first season. So, yeah, it doesn't seem like there was a lot of designated personnel for the offseason. I mean, you started getting the familiar faces back in there, like, Kurt Menefee and Daryl Johnston and all the other people who were invested in the broadcast side of it, obviously starting to come out and promote it again. And once they were starting to announce the hubs, they were starting to get people involved. But before and during and around all of that time, the only things you would get, I guess, occasionally would be on the USFL Twitter, which were poll questions, maybe an occasional shout out to some USFL player that did something big that day, Kevontae Turpin, which I will say they did a better job of that than the XFL did this past season, especially with multiple starting quarterbacks at different iterations from the past league. That's something that could have been mentioned a little bit more. I don't think we saw anything about Josh Johnson on Sunday, did we? When he got into the game, I don't remember hearing a peep about that.
I don't know if we would want to. I don't think that was
he's worth mentioning.
I don't know if the performance was worth mentioning. I think Josh Johnson was worth mentioning. I would
have just said, hey, he's survived and he stuck around for a long time, but maybe that's different. I get it. Heineke, I know you can champion a little bit more. PJ Walker at times you can champion a little bit more. I get that. But my point being is that other than that, I agree with you. I don't remember seeing like consistent characters or consistent figures in the USFL. I think that's really the biggest thing with something like the XFL, and that everybody, you and I included, have harped on many times. It's like, if you have The Rock, use him. If you have Danny Garcia, use him. If you have Russ Brandon, use him. And they've been doing that at times, not as maybe often or as consistent as we've wanted, but at least when they do something, they at least get those figures out in front and in public. But the USFL, it's sometimes just feels like a little bit more of a faceless entity sometimes, I guess. And it does. I mean, the information comes out, of course, maybe at 3 a.m., but there are things that don't seem like there's literally a face to every single announcement or things that kind of come through the pipeline. I see your point there.
I understand that sometimes, a lot of the time, it does feel like, okay, The Rock's promoting 16 different things. Danny's got that clothing line now, the tunics and stuff. Like, okay, they're just using the XFL, they're brand building, and it's just one of the things. There's not a time in my life it does not feel like the USFL is a side project for every single person for the most part that's involved in it, right? So like, I think it cuts both ways. I am critical of the XFL for that, and now that The Rock's cleared his slate, he wasn't at Mania, he's here. We've heard he's got his schedule clear for this. He's in Texas. Okay, it wasn't as early as I wanted it, as people wanted it, but like, it was even like the night, and I didn't tweet all this out because I didn't want to, like, it was such a contentious thing, but even like when DeMar Hamlin, when all of that stuff happened, we have Randy Ambrosi coming out tweeting, we have Danny tweeting, we have The Rock tweeting, we have the XFL account tweeting, we have, all these things. USFL didn't tweet any of that stuff because whoever was working that account was off that night, and that's fine. But like, let's not pretend that some of the stuff, that we're critical with the XFL is not all. I mean, I think both leagues share an equal criticism for that, where it does feel like sometimes the major players involved have other things going on, where alt football fans by nature, like, don't have a lot of other things going on because we are alt football fans. Like, we are locked in. It feels like a lot more sometimes than like leadership and management.
Yeah, no, that consistency isn't there for either league yet. And I think they're still coming along. And you got to give the CFL credit. Those people are out there. Those people are out there. The individuals are out there. They have their winter meetings. You had a ton of interviews. Everyone had interviews, and you had speculation on player movement. You were able to talk to players. You were able to track players. You were able to talk to media members that were involved and be able to connect themselves in that league. That the CFL, I will say, like, going through an actually normal offseason has felt like a normal offseason, but you can still collect information, gather sort of things that are, and tracking along things. Like, it's not people were talking about, like, for example, the Bo Levi Mitchell news coming into the last 2 months. The official announcement was obviously made this past week, but we knew speculatively that he was going to be joining the Ticats at some point, but presumably like 90% sure, because we had consistent communication, coverage, and interaction through different like avenues. And that doesn't always seem to be the case with a lot of the American football leagues. The alt football leagues in this country are still something that we're working on. And that's, I think, one of the keys for, again, this is down the road. Obviously, XFL has to get through a season first, but we'll see where they handle that versus the USFL, who just kind of, it was kind of like AFK away from the keyboard, like for basically a couple of months.
Yeah, and I think a point here later too, but making these leagues exist further outside of the offseason, like you said, USFL here really has picked up in the last week. I wish that, and we'll see what the XFL does because we haven't lived through it, hasn't lived through an XFL offseason yet, but I wish that the USFL, I've said this a million times, I don't care if it's me or Pat or News Hub or Newsroom or whoever, like, lean into these people that are doing the work for you in the offseason. Like, God forbid the USFL retweet, your News Hub, ranking of whatever. Like, I never understand this. Like, well, we don't want, like, and I've talked with CFL people, and they're like, well, the league doesn't like to do that because they have sponsors and there's ad stuff. And like, they don't want, okay, well, this speaks to us, or this is like, we're affiliated with that. Like, I would just lean on the content. You have people literally doing this work for free. I never understood not leaning on that. The other two notes with this, we'll move on because I don't want this to be forever. XFL needs to work on merchandise right now. People, commenting that, and also ticket sales. There's been reports about that. So I know we're springboarding everyone right now. We're bringing everyone on. But that is the problem here with training camp and kickoff and ESPN trials, and we're testing the rules and we're making merchandise and we're doing all this stuff. Like, I didn't decide the timeline. This is the timeline we've decided on because we didn't want to hire these people back in August, although we hired directors of team operations for travel scheduling back in August. And so this is kind of where we're at now. Just get that out under my breath.
You got enough breath there?
Yeah. I've heard comments like Reed needs to breathe more during the podcast. We believe, second bill, my point. We believe every fan is entitled to a total entertainment experience at an affordable cost for all members of the family from the time they arrive to the arena to the time they depart. Obviously, both leagues are succeeding in ticket sales right now, right? USFL, for better or worse, right? Like, get a beach towel, get a ticket, do all this stuff. XFL, I think people were pleasantly surprised. The ticket prices right now, and we're front row at Lumen Field for $70 a game or whatever it is. I mean, I know that's on the extreme end. The issue with that though, concessions, like when we were at Lumen Field back, we have a problem. Like, we're not staffing the stadiums enough. What are your thoughts about kind of the affordability of the leagues, concessions, merchandise, kind of all of that stuff in terms of the fans spending money?
Oh, it's vital. I mean, it is so crucial that they have that element in place. And as I mentioned earlier about the whole conference championship thing, about, sort of this, money grubbing ownership style of trying to get more money out of the pockets of fans. That's something you absolutely do not want to be seen as. And I think that's kind of a negative idea in general. I mean, look, that's part of the reason why, honestly, going down to Birmingham last year, the least cost measure of that whole thing was the ticket to the game. That was really the biggest draw for me, at least, was being able to go down there, because I said, well, it's not going to cost that much. I have to spend, a certain amount of money on infrastructure as far as like getting to the stadium and all that. It's going to be a hassle. I'm not going to go. But for someone like me who likes to travel, yeah, absolutely. The affordability of the experience is important, even just for people locally too. Of course, obviously, being able to have that experience locally and being able to say, hey, it's not so much of a big deal if I decide to do this instead of doing XYZ, which would have been a lot more cheaper, right? You need to be able to entice people to be able to come into the fray if it's economically viable for them. So yeah, I mean, their ticket pricing and everything so far has been pretty reasonable. And obviously, hopefully the I've seen some of the merchandising prices. Some of it I'm like, yeah, I'm like, not so much. It really depends on the thing, but that's more of a personal choice. So yeah, that's, and especially again, because the NFL is almost extortionate levels of expensive with some of the things going to games and the merchandise and all that. If you can be able to have that alternative for people, yes, this is honestly one of the ways that they survive, quite frankly.
The other issue I would like to see, and in terms of like the game day experience, I have a note here. What is the in-stadium experience going to be like for either fan? XFL, I think, is hard, right? We're only using these stadiums 5 times, right? For when we're playing up there and all of that. USFL, I know last year we had some banners and stuff. Birmingham, we had the big football, right? Big football, big football. We have lots of photos of the big football. But like in terms of the stadium, like not a lot of personalization there. I know people like, hey, is there going to be merch for sale here? Is there a merch shop? None of that. I would like to see we have the 4 hubs. Like, can we invest in that more, right? Can we like make each of those give some flair to the Memphis hub, give some, God forbid, have a merch shop there. Like, I know that it's a little more work and it's a little more whatever, but I think that would be really cool. Like, even if you're not stocking like all 8 teams, like, can we get some Memphis and Gambler, Showboats and Gamblers gear, like in Memphis? Like, can we incorporate that in? I would like to see it with that. The other similar, the bill right here. We believe that every fan should receive the very best in competitive football, entertainment, merchandise, food, and beverage for their purchasing power. That goes into that. The USFL tickets, are those too cheap, do you think, compared to the XFL now that we have apples to apples? I know it's different businesses, but what do you think about the USFL still? Like, if we're doing the $20 ticket or whatever, bring in your whole truckload of people.
Well, I mean, it's different cities now, so we'll see if that model works for different places, right? It didn't quite connect the same way in Birmingham, but now that you have different cities, who knows? Maybe it works better in a community. I mean, that's the thing I want to find out. I'm like, okay, what kind of demographic are you going to have? I really want more metrics on the demographics, because quite frankly, you couldn't get that information from the USFL last year because people only showed up to Birmingham games. So I want to get more of that idea from other hubs, Memphis, from Canton, from Detroit. Are we going to be able to find out a demographic of like, okay, what kinds of people are actually coming to these games in the stadiums? Does that make sense? Right? Is that something that actually where they're going to bring their families into that environment? I get the idea. It's a good idea on paper, but is it actually going to be good for those different places? And that's the thing we have to find out. But I know that varies from city to city, of course. But yeah, to touch back really quick on what you were saying earlier about merchandise. I mean, look, I went to a San Diego Fleet game and one of the 4 home games that they had before that the AAF folded. And I bought a t-shirt. I made it a point to buy a t-shirt because I really wanted some merch. And by God, they were selling merch, right? And that was in the first season of existing and before it promptly folded. And now it's a collector's item for me. I'm glad that I've held on to that. But that's obviously, you don't want that fate for the rest of these leagues, but that's something that is, I absolutely think is part of the experience and something that really gets people to be more passionate and more invested in the product, right? And not just, if people want to make their own stuff, that's great, but why not take advantage of that passion?
Even back to that, even the XFL at Lumen, and I never did it because I always thought like the game day experience was so short because we had like the modified halftime because we wanted to get people in and out. We wanted the TV window to be whatever. Even at Lumen, they had like a side pop-up shop. I mean, I don't think Defenders had that when I was at Audi Field. I would like, get the USFL now. I mean, the USFL has good merch. better, I would say better merch than the XFL. I know people have been really wanting the Under Armour gear. I have heard that will not be available for a very long time. I heard that we were not getting any Under Armour gear. The hat that I have, like that, I don't know why that's not coming. They're trying to get. The other thing we haven't talked about really on the podcast, besides the Under Armour not making it, are you concerned that three of the XFL teams thus far are doing their media day things in practice squad jerseys, because it does not look like their Under Armour game jerseys have arrived yet to training camp?
Yeah, that's a manufacturing snafu, and I think that is a bit of a concern. But I think that's something logistically maybe they weren't able to anticipate. I don't know. Maybe there just was some sort of backup in terms of getting those out, and maybe they just have to wait until mid-season to be able to to present those fully. I mean, look, everyone and their mom wants a jersey, right? That's kind of the big one. That's a big one for me, but I think this was inevitably going to be something I could have seen happening. Is it cool that we have a background of how the jerseys were kind of designed and some of the apparel was designed? Yes, that's awesome. But again, most fans outside of us don't care about that. They just want to be able to have the merch. So yeah, I think that's an unfortunate it's an unfortunate trip up, I guess, but I'm not surprised that's the case at this point.
I hated that we didn't have the USFL stuff for season one. We didn't get it till mid-season. I hate that we don't have the XFL jerseys. Homer Reed, XFL fanboy, a little bit more. It's a little more tolerable, or if you have like XFL 2020 stuff you can wear, right? Like I had an interview today. I'm not going to spoil yet for next week. Very excited the interview for next week recorded. I was able to wear my old team jersey for that, but it's more tolerable, but it's not acceptable. It's not acceptable either way. I know manufacturing COVID's existed for 3 years now. Like we need to be able to figure that out, and we need to be able to get Under Armour on that. The next point, we believe every fan is entitled to interact with and have access to players and coaches for autographs and conversation in recognition of their support at every game. Obviously, I thought USFL did a good job of that post-game. Saw a lot of interactions, right? Fan events here, we saw a little bit of that, like the Stallions. I think they had like the trophy showing and all of that. We're getting more XFL stuff, not a lot. We're flying in specific players, but in terms of like this new virtual autograph we have with the XFL, like them trying to lean more into it, feels like NFT. Like how can the XFL work on that? Do we need to fly in a day earlier to game day? I don't think they're going to be doing that. Like, what would you like to see the XFL do here?
Yeah, I'm more of a traditionalist. I want them to still have like personal access. As a non-NFT holder myself, I think this is something that they need to work on as far as like, what about, having sideline access, right? Maybe being able to get people to have like VIP, a VIP package or something of that nature, be able to kind of have them more included in sort of being more around the team, right? That's another thing that I had at the Fleet game that I went to. That was a perk that I was able to get, and it was able to kind of watch the warm-ups on the sideline of the stadium and be down on the field, which I never thought I would be down there because it was old Qualcomm Stadium where the Chargers used to play, and I was like, I can't believe I'm down here. So that was really cool for me, and I think that's something that absolutely could be included. I have to give a shout out to them because I think there's somebody that really understands this. Who really gets the whole, and I know it's in their name, but it gets the whole fan experience, right? Fan-controlled football. They understand this, okay? Their packaging and their ideas and their detailing is great. And that's exactly something that I think needs to be more, like, I know it can't be that personal, that explicit, obviously, but at least they can take elements of that. I mean, they do the whole NFT thing as well, but they do it in different ways. They have different stylings of people. I would absolutely take a page out of their book in terms of how you get some of that access going. I really do.
I loved the open practice they did this week, right? I know Anthony did that with News Hub, did a big write-up. Anthony was on the show, I think 2 weeks ago, doing the Renegades breakdown. Obviously we can't do that, right? So, we can't fly up the team to Seattle, whatever. We did those Seattle open camps before. I know those were heavily attended. I'll be curious, the Select a Seat event, how many people get out for that? They're doing a lot right now, right? Beck did the call today, and I know the Guardians people, Andy's sending out emails all the time. We have availability and all this, but it's all the media people, right? Like if you're a fan, if you're watching, you're getting the clips online. There's just not, and I mean, I guess you don't get that, like you don't get Pete Carroll all the time for the Seahawks, but at least they have practice open if you want to go do that. It's just, that's a challenge with that. I don't know if the virtual signing, the iPad or whatever, and then sending it is going to be enough for that. It's just tough. I don't know for the next 3 years. Like, I don't know how you combat that. Like I said, except we fly people in, Friday, we do media Friday, they sleep, and then we do stuff, we play the game Saturday. But I do not believe that was going to be how the travel schedule is right now. We believe, do you have another point?
No, I agree. I think this is a long-term solution, and I think this is something they're not going to be able to really put their feet into, dig their claws into until later on down the road. And it's a bit unfortunate because this league seems so personal and so close to its community 3 years ago, and maybe this is just a bit of a different approach in terms of just maybe trying to make sure some of the other elements are in place first before that comes. But that is something that I hope they're able at least maybe dedicate a little bit more manpower to, maybe next year or the year after. Not fully, maybe not in its full-fledged form, but maybe just at least a little bit more.
We believe that fans are entitled to fast, accurate, and complete information about our players, coaches, league, games, and performance. I'm going to let you lean into this because I know that you and everyone over at News Hub is more into, trying to track the teams and stuff right now. I will say, if you are a casual fan, you have no idea what's happening with the teams. If you're someone that's like, tracking it, you still really don't. I think Kyle Nash last week, he was saying with the Guardians, he only knew the one player because they introduced him on the, the Zoom call that way. And that, he knew that was the center or whatever for the team. Explain for people maybe that aren't in this small circle we are of all football media, the challenges right now covering both the XFL and the USFL.
Yeah, it's in a very much needs to know basis at this point. It's very much the inner circle of, okay, well, these people are in it, and so they know all of it. But listen, I think there's a difference between a watchdog, which, is most journalistic work, and actually having public access and consumption to certain things and certain information. I do believe that there needs to be a better job done on the front of the XFL in terms of publicly making some of this information aware. Now, look, that communications page, it's cute. I like it. Obviously, there's like official postings of certain transactions, but they need to do more of that. And they need to be able to say, this person was released, this person wasn't. Because quite frankly, we are in the same boat in that we may not have all of the personnel that we need and all the manpower that we need to be able to do this on a regular basis. Right now, that there's no like fully fledged media member of a circuit outside of our group that may be really in deep with some of these points of information and be able to have that updated. That's stuff that I think can be done a better job. The USFL does a little bit better of it. Do they release it at odd times? Yes. But point is, it gets out there. And that's kind of something that I agree with you, that needs to be, at least for everyone else, because Reed, it's hard for me to keep up with these names. Like, there's certain things where I'm like, he was traded. Oh, that's right. He was traded here. And this person was signed over here. It's hard to keep up with that, even on my own end. And instead of having to refresh, the XFL page, the roster page 100 times in a day, it needs to be a little bit more consistent in terms of what sort of information is put out there and how it's applied and when it's posted and when it's known to be posted, right? I think that's, for everyone else, it would be more convenient if that was the case. But again, maybe there's just not dedicated personnel to that right now, and we have to do the work for it.
Like you said, USFL does do a more consistent job. It's consistently odd hours, but at least they post it. We see that every week. I have listeners that send me every week, here are the transactions. I mean, they collect them all, that the USFL, like, hey, here's everyone that got signed this week. Here's everyone, so I can keep track. I will say, if we have media people doing a tremendous job, don't get me wrong. But, if we're posting 7 TikTok videos a day, we're posting 8, we're getting on TikTok now, we're posting all this. Take an hour of that. So you do 7 videos, not 8, or do 6, not 7. Make sure you make sure your roster is up to date on the thing. Put that out. Like, I think it's heavy focus right now. Like, we got to post photos, we got to post content, we got to post whatever. Like, if this is a real football league, we need to treat it like a real football league. If you want people to cover it, it needs to be consistent. And like, I don't know if it's a man woman power issue right now. I think it's just their marching orders, right? Like, shoot as much content as you can, and we just need to post, and that's fine. but we are in training camp. If you want people to care about this, real football people getting ready to do fantasy here in 2 weeks, if you want people to gamble on this, you got to treat this like a real football league, and having the rosters on the website up to date. They're getting there, but like bare minimum, yes, release the transactions.
Right. And well, that begs the question then. I'm glad you brought that point up. Where does the information about injuries come through, and what portals do those come through? And is that going to also be accurately imparted upon the public? Because if you're going to let people come in with betting knowledge, you need to let them know about those sorts of things and have people at least be able to understand where people are in terms of, their health and where they're going to be in terms of if they're going to play on Saturday or Sunday or not. So I agree with you. That is also information that has to be disseminated accurately and effectively if you are going to include the betting market.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah. So we need to, and I have a couple more notes here. Are they going to have an official fantasy betting partner? Are we going to revive the XFL 2020 where we can track, player stats and all of that? In terms of game and team stuff, we still don't know where to buy single game tickets for Vegas. I know season ticket holders had that sent out this week. We are also, a couple more notes here. We are 15 days by kickoff of the release of this. We still don't know. Spanish speaking fans don't have a complete ESPN Deportes broadcast schedule available to them, despite Danny making the point of saying she did value the Hispanic population and other minority groups. They said that to me when we were in Arlington, and be looking to expand that out, especially when you're playing in Texas, especially when you're playing in Houston, especially when you're playing so we need to have that out. And then I have one more thing. Any other thoughts on those notes?
I wouldn't be surprised if the ESPN Deportes information doesn't come out the week of, leading up to kickoff. I know that's unfair, but I would not be surprised if that's the case. I think I don't want to see it as an afterthought. I don't want to call it that, but if that always seems to be second fiddle to kind of the other things that come along in the pipeline. And so I wouldn't be surprised if that's they're kind of just trying to make sure everything else is sort of up and running and making sure everything else is working in clockwork fashion. And then I think they're going to get to that point, but that's probably not going to be until like 3, 4, 5 days before the kickoff. So I think you're right. You called her out, and it's good that you mentioned that, because she did mention that herself. Not call her out, but like, you know what I mean? I think it's good that you brought that up, that she did mention that it is something that's important for the audience, especially with the bilingual and the Spanish speaking audience. But it's going to come out like right before.
I will say, and I don't even know who told this to me anymore, so I can't even get that person in trouble, but it was told to me after I went to Arlington and then we did the post whatever stuff. And I said something like where Danny was snarky in her response about the USFL, or like, cause I said, hey, what's the deal? And it got back to me that upset her, that was said that it was. So like, at least like apparently Danny knew that I said somehow. I don't think Danny listened, but someone it got to the ears of Danny Garcia that I thought that it was a snarky response, is I think the word that was used. So just the time that we live in, but that had gone back to me back here in July or August, whenever that was. So a couple more notes. We're going to get through this. I don't want this to be an 8-hour podcast. We believe the fans expect us to be involved in their communities to make contributions for a better, more positive place to live. I think we could just say we would like to see the players, be more in the markets, be more engaged with the fans. Do you have anything on that? I think that's kind of self-explanatory. It is.
And I know for a fact that it actually was the case with, I have to use the example again, the San Diego Fleet, because that's the last time I had a true form alternative football league community involvement. And I remember there being players, I think they got some sort of sponsorship deal with one of the fitness centers around here, and they were able to take lessons or take classes with that fitness group when they were here and they were doing their games. And it was kind of cool. It was like them kind of being part of that. And then people were like, hey, what do you do for a living? Oh, you play for what team? And then people could ask them. So yeah, just stuff like that. Absolutely. I mean, that goes without saying. We'll see how much time they dedicate to it. Because again, with the whole hub model thing about them practicing, how much time can they dedicate to that in this time frame, and how much time do they have outside of traveling? I'd imagine they're not really thinking about it much. I mean, I think this is a survival mode kind of thing for a lot of them. And to be quite honest, obviously for the Arlington team, they don't have to worry about it. They're there. It's cool. Maybe most of the Texas teams, that's cool. But what about everyone else? The North Division, has a lot to think about. Orlando has to think about that too. So yeah, I don't know if we're going to get that to the degree that maybe we as fans or as media members perhaps want to see yet.
It's this trial by fire this first time. Is so much going on right now. Like, it's like you said, it's trial by fire. We're all trying to figure this out. We have people, living in Texas here for 6 weeks and trying to get all this, and now it's snowing, and we're, trying to fight. Like, it's so much to do, and why? Maybe I would have. I would have hired some of these. It's not up to the people that are working the jobs right now when they got hired. I think they're doing an admirable job. The last one on here, and then we have two that we've added. So these are all from the whatever. We believe that fans should know that we are committed to serve and not to be served, to give and not just take, to inspire and encourage people to higher levels of personal and professional achievement, growth, maturity, and respect for others. It goes along the lines of, building the community, building the players. I think enriching players, right? I think the USFL does a good job of that, with providing for their players and the tuition and all of that. Maybe the XFL could do more of that. Any thoughts on that? Again, these are a little foo-foo-y at the end, and then we have two more that are relating to the XFL and the USFL.
I mean, if you want to treat yourself as a professional, that's kind of goes without saying. That's the stuff that you need to be able to uphold yourselves in a standard. You need to have a standard of quality and a standard of excellence and a standard of holding yourself of a high opinion. I mean, again, I still think that one of the best leagues out there that does that we cover is the CFL. The CFL really believes that in a lot of fashion. And I think that's something that people and the personnel that work in that league understand that. And I do think that at least here for the fact of the XFL, I think they do understand that as well. And I think they'll be able to find a way to get to that point. It may not come immediately, but I do think they understand that.
Yeah, no, and this is all time. I mean, this is why we're, the U.S. didn't just fight off the British in a day. I mean, right? This is right. I don't know. I flunked world history. That's what I was going to agree with you though, that the CFL does do a tremendous job of that. Of like, we're getting the players out, like we're sending them to the schools, we're sending them, we're involving them in the community. Bo now is in Hamilton and he's with his family and they're doing all this stuff. Like CFL does a tremendous job of that. I think it's one of the strongest and hardest points of the CFL game is, the fans are the most important thing in the world. And then the fans do feel like they're the most important thing in the world. And sometimes there's issues there. The two that we've added, and I really do believe in this, we believe the fans, so these are new. We believe the fans expect us to make our league known before and after the season so that new fans will be brought in to join them for the coming season because we believe that that's what makes fans great are the experiences they share together in numbers. Just last Friday, I posted the episode. I go down, I'm filming on those research, the same ones I was in San Diego. I'm filming the one up here in Seattle, wearing my Seattle Sea Dragons hat, my beanie. The guy on the ship, and he like lives on the ship. He's like, hey, is that Seattle thing? And I go, oh yeah, like it's the new. No clue. It's coming back in 3 weeks. I know I know it's one guy, and it's this is all anecdotal, and he lives on the ship and all that. But like, we still have so many people. I think that we're like cursorily know about this that I don't believe know that this is happening still, and we're 2 weeks out.
Reed, let me tell you about the people I've run into where I tell them what I'm doing and they're like, oh, like last year when I was traveling for the USFL and they're like, oh, doesn't The Rock own that? I'm like, no, not that league. It's a different league. And then I would have to pivot and tell them about other, both what's the dichotomy between the both of them. So yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, these are people who are on the periphery, of course. These are people that are still learning about this stuff and still want to learn about this stuff. But I do have more people now ask me about it, that they know that I'm in this sphere of knowledge. They understand that they can ask me questions about like, hey, what's going on with this? Or, have you heard anything about like if the team's getting this? Or, people ask me about the stadium deals around here as well. Like if there's going to be more teams that play in this place for this time, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, but yeah, there's of course there's people that are not in the know of this. Like this is absolutely part of league building and part of culture building. This is going to be something that has to be done. An incumbent of all the people who follow it and are engaged with it. And I think it'll come naturally over time if they are willing to do that, because it is something that I think does I will say, it does catch people's interest. I will say that, like, people do, like, when someone asks me about it or when someone notices something, they seem genuinely interested. So I think that's a good positive first step.
I'm really scared for week 1. Like, I talk with people and they say don't worry about it, but like, I'm scared. I want there to be more national. I have on here, except for The Rock posting on social media, there's not a lot of national. This is happening right now. There's also not a lot of like, we're in Seattle. I used to drive on the viaduct and they'd have a sign, hey, we're, the Dragons are coming or whatever. Like, there's just not a lot in markets. I think Arlington, if you look at the seating charts, the tickets that have been sold, I think that correlates, right? Like Arlington, pretty packed, at least for the kickoff game, pretty packed. Orlando, Seattle, some of these games. And like I said before, if you don't follow The Rock on Instagram or Twitter or the XFL accounts, like, I don't know how this exists right now. And even the USFL, and we'll talk about that here before we go. They're running ads and stuff. I mean, they were last year, and they had the signs going and the Daytona 500, and they weren't worried about local markets. They didn't care. They just said, we just need to get as many people putting their eyeballs on this as possible. It'd be nice if people in New Orleans watch or whatever, but like, we just need people to do that. You got to get people in these seats here, and there are not a lot of people in Seattle that know this is going on.
Well, speaking of eyeballs, I have to ask you a very loaded question, Reed.
Uh-oh.
So, and since I'm not going to probably be on next week's broadcast before this happens, the Super Bowl Sunday's coming up. I'm sure you're aware of which channel it's on. It's on Fox. And obviously they're most likely going to run a USFL ad. Is there in any way, shape, or form, realm of possibility that there could be enough money or enough willingness for them to accept an XFL spot ad on that channel on that day during that game?
I don't think they air a USFL ad.
Really? You don't think so?
I don't think so. Am I off? I'm not in all the chat with it. I don't think they do. I think they would take the XFL's money to air ad. I don't think Fox. NBC didn't last year. NBC, and I know that they were just running the games. They didn't own the league, but NBC said, we're selling each one of these spots for $500,000. Like, do you think we're giving, like, one ad of the Super Bowl is what percentage of the XFL's like national, like, what is the USFL's yearly operating budget, and how does that relate to like 30-second ad in the Super Bowl?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I mean, since it's an entity that's owned by them, then at that case, like, they don't have to. Then you're
giving up money,
right? You're giving up money that won't let that in. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just saying, like, they've been doing it like with regularity on the Fox channel and all their games, all their NFL games, and the conference championship. I'm just saying, I'm personally believe that they're going to do it. That they're going to put out a USFL ad. Like, I would think that would seem silly. To me, that would seem silly that they wouldn't even just take advantage of the audience. I know it's money, but then again, so is this other thing that's supposed to be making you money anyways. Wouldn't it be like, as far as a long-term investment, wouldn't that make sense? I mean, I would think so.
If you have made it 50 minutes into Andy Murray and I's drafting of the Bill of Rights for the XFL and the USFL fans, if you have the permission in the world, troll my ass. I'll go on the stand here. If you made it this far into this, I don't think anyone that even would care is listening. But if you made it this far, yeah. Oh, dummy Reed's an idiot. Fox ran the app. That's fine. I mean, it's the same as last year. I want this to succeed. I don't not want it. I don't see Fox in the business of like, well, we could take this $500,000 and just burn it, and we're gonna do this instead. I think they would say, no, we will take that ad money.
Why don't they just pull all the money from all the people in the league? Just like, hey, Kirk, can you put in a little bit? Hey, Daryl, can you put in some? Darren, can you put in some, like a potluck, and just pay for the commercial themselves? I don't know. That wouldn't vote very well, obviously, but like, I don't know. It's something I have to think about. I mean, look, last year, now I know there wasn't any direct XFL sponsorship, but I mean, The Rock did show up, right before kickoff in the Super Bowl last year on NBC. So I'm just saying, like, media connections matter. Sponsorship of your own product matter. I'm almost like certain that that's going to happen. I really do. And I know it's burning money, but like, I really believe that they're going to do a USFL commercial. And I don't think they would have the gall to then juxtapose that with another league. I don't think they would allow that to happen with the XFL, and I don't think the XFL really wants to spend money on that proposition. But I just think it's, for me. I know it feels obvious to me. I know it's just funny that I don't feel the same from you.
I just like, and this is the USFL, and I whatever. I'm already know at this point. Like, least it's to me, it always feels like, what is the least amount of effort we can do a lot of the time to do stuff. This is like the commercial they had on Fox before, right? Because Fox doesn't have any games now, or like whatever. It was like the last time they could make the ad or whatever, right? When they aired the big, like, ooh, the Rock, it's Hollywood football or whatever. Like, they make this awesome ad. It gets everyone talking. Oh, they're throwing shade at the XFL. Like, what have they made another? At least last year we had like the guy sitting at the restaurant and wanted football, and then the guy that was in the car and wanted football, and then there was like 3 or 4 of those. Remember, we used to get like emails from Lou back when Lou was with the league, like, hey Reed, check out the 10 a.m. game today. Like, there's gonna be. I'm like, oh, okay, that's exciting. I mean, the USFL made one ad, and then they're like, okay, like that, we're good. Like, we made a TV ad, like, we're moving on.
Okay. I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, like, there is a bare minimum aspect to how they run things, but I'm not going to say I'm going to be willing to bet, but I'm going to say that I'm pretty, like, I just have a lot of confidence that that's going to happen, but we'll see, We'll see.
Here's the question, and then we got to get out of here in an hour. So we got 7 minutes. We're going to be out. We have one more to talk about. So how long was that ad for the USFL? That was a 30-second spot, right? The one like, this isn't a Hollywood production, and we had whatever. Like, do they air? I mean, do they pay to air a 30-second ad? Do we cut down? Do we pay to cut down to a 15? Do we remake a 15-second ad? Like, now are we paying for more content plus we're giving up money for the ad?
Again, it depends on how much confidence they have in it, but I would think that they would go into the 30-second. But if they just want to do 15-second, would I be surprised? No, but if I think that if they want to make more impact, then they should do the 30-second ad. If you forced me to pick which one they would choose, I would say they'd probably go 15 seconds more than 30 seconds. But I think if they're going to do it, I think they should do 30 seconds. They're
gonna be like that 10-second one, like the buffer, like, oh, we didn't get out to break quite away, like we gotta throw in the ad. I'm getting like, I'm gonna be murdered on this. I'm gonna put it in the comments if you're still listening. Is the USFL airing an ad? I'll post that like Monday. Do we get a USFL ad for that?
That's a great poll question. Yeah,
that's a great poll question. I'll post it tonight. I'll post it right when we get out here. Well, no, maybe I'll post it tomorrow with the episode. Last one, we believe that fans should be entitled to as much, if not more, access and content from teams outside of games. This is things we've talked about, right? The USFL now, I will say kudos to them. They're hiring 4 freelance, so that's seasonal, social media people, 1 for each hub. I think that's a tremendous move. Again, we're doing this February. That feels like a better time, February, and then we get in, and training camp's going to be in March. Like, I hope they can I think they could fill 4 social media positions. And, the XFL was trying to fill like 16, and they never, we want 1 per each market, and then another one in Arlington. And I think they were happy to get 8 people. So any thoughts on the USFL's that, and then anything else before we go?
No, that's good. I'm glad they're finally getting more people instead of just 1 for all the hubs, but you need to have more dedicated personnel, of course. Again, how did those hub accounts, I guess, run outside of that? That's my only thing is, well, you're doing it in season. That's great. But like but it's kind of a tandem duo now, right? Because now you're having like 2 teams. I think is it 2 teams for each person now? So it's like
they've managed the hub, yeah. So presumably, like the Memphis people would do Memphis and the Gamblers.
Okay, so again, like, how do you kind of distinguish that sort of personality in each one? I mean, that's just my thing. Like, it does. I mean, if you don't care about that, then that's fine. But like, I do notice things like that as like personality of each social media, account. Like, I notice that with NFL accounts all the time, obviously. Like, I noticed like there's a definitely like a permeation of like a certain style that comes through on all of the different ones. So, I mean, it's good that they're getting more people. Obviously you prefer to have 8, but that's still something that's going to have to come with time. So it's a step. I mean, it's a good step.
There you go. Hear ye, hear you. Here we drafted the fight for your rights here, the Bill of Rights. But I think this is good. I think this is constructive. I guess to circle back to what I said at the top, to me, and I might be the outlier. You tell me if you agree or not. XFL, USFL, if we had a Venn diagram and we had NFL over here and CFL over here, the XFL and the USFL are far more in the CFL, that side of the diagram, than maybe even the management and ownership realize.
Well, when you say that, do you mean like in terms of like operation cost or like?
I mean, in terms of like, we need to grassroots, we need to engage fans, we need to build the local fan engagement, we need to cater to the hardcores, we need to do like, I just, to me, and in conversations I've had with people that have had conversations, like, I just, they're like, oh, we're going to be a top like 6. Yeah. I mean, maybe eventually, right? That's the goal. But like right now, USFL is the worst with that. Like you are not, you're just not like it. They're showing the USFL highlights during the NFL games. That's great. We're not showing the crowd because we know why. Like I think to me, it's more, they're all in that bucket. And that, like, I don't podcast the NFL. I podcast alternative football, which, spoiler, CFL fans, like 56 million people or whatever watch the Chiefs AFC game. Like, CFL is alternate football to the audience that we talk about, and the audience that generally consumes football that is played on the field.
Yeah, I mean that goes for all the audiences, and I mean all the leagues, obviously, with the Arena Football League coming back, and Indoor Football League, and all of them are all lumped together, for better or worse. I mean, we know the distinctions, the differences between all of them, the play styles, players, coaches, all that. We all know that, but also there's a lot of carryover in terms of like how in terms of them trying to survive and be able to survive outside of the NFL model. So, and that's the thing. Yeah, you're right. I think USFL and XFL maybe is a more corporate structure, kind of like just being able to have their everything sort of aligned in a perfect neat fashion. Their checkbooks are balanced and this and that, and that's great. But like, yeah, you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, the people come to you as a way of being engaged in something exciting and new, and there's a lot of potential behind what you're doing, and that's. I think goes to the same thing with. I mean, that's why the CFL survived so long. I mean, it's different. It's unique. It's in its own category, and it's something that people still invest themselves and still want to improve and make better. Right? There is personal investment in that product. It's the same thing with these two as well. But with that, as much as you want to have like corporate policy as far as like running your operation and making sure everything is tightly wound, I do think that there has to be more personality and more personal connection here. I agree with you. And that's why this Bill of Rights is a great idea. And, hopefully that permeates. And they should hire you to draft a Bill of Rights for the league.
Oh, there you go. Guys, girls, what'd you think? Did you enjoy this exercise? I think it's fun. Like I said, I don't want to complain, but I think, this is constructive. We have lots of other actual football content this week, with Chris Jones and, Coach Sharper and everything else. So, Andy, I appreciate your time. An hour here of recording. I scared to see what this podcast length will be, but one of these days, maybe we'll make this more and more regular. But the last time I had a regular podcast host, we all know how that ended up. So I think this is good. You check in here. It's like a no commitment. You come in when you can. I think it's a good. I think I could talk to you for hours. You know that.
Well, I mean, yeah, I was about to say if I became a regular host, you're going to be pushing at least 5 hours every week. So just forewarning you that stress.
Yeah, it was good. When Andy and I were at dinner together, it was like, I'm on the podcast with Andy. It was good. So it was fun. I appreciate it. Thank you for the wonderful time in San Diego. Thanks for sharing this. Lots of good content coming next week. Like I said, already recorded a banger interview today. You have to like, what jerseys does Reed own from XFL 2020? Who could he possibly be doing an interview with? So thank you guys so much. We'll see you later. Huge special thanks to all of our guests today. Chris Jones, courtesy of the Edmonton Elks. Really appreciate them setting that up. Outside, we missed Chris's window. We had a window set in the CFL Media Day, and Chris ran long just because popular guy doing lots of interviews. So I appreciate the Edmonton Elks scheduling that. Chris, out of town, traveling, doing his work. So thank you, Chris, for coming on. Obviously, Coach James Sharper with the XFL DC Defenders right now, Super Bowl winning NFL player, and really enjoyed having him on and getting his kind of past experiences and thoughts now about joining the XFL as the linebackers and special teams coach. We had Pat Rifino. Really appreciate Pat making time in his busy schedule. Christian McFarland, him and his agent setting that one up, and then obviously the professor Andrew Murray. Really appreciate that. Like I said, in my interview with Andy Murray, the professor, already got a big interview already recorded for next week. I have some more previewy stuff. We should have XFL roster cut downs next week, near the end of the week. So incorporating all of that, like and subscribe. Hope you guys enjoyed this week. It was probably a long one, but I hope you guys enjoyed sticking with us. And thanks as always for your support. See you next time.